Sports Boston's Trenni Casey on the sports impact of the war. Then, in the latest example of imminent domain fights, a Somerville family refuses to give up their home of 40 years to make room for the YMCA's modern expansion. Would you hold on to your home for 4 decades or take the millions in the name of so-called progress? Politics next, Boston Public Radio.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Cady Coleman. A member of Israel's security cabinet says that Israel had informed the United States, even before the start of the war, that it intended to strike Iran. This was over Iran's efforts to move parts of its nuclear and missile programs underground. Itai Stern has more from Tel Aviv.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio told reporters on Monday it was, quote, abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. Asked about those comments, Israeli cabinet member Eli Cohen said Israel had made clear that what it was seeing in Iran could not continue. He said Iran was planning to move its ballistic missiles and parts of its nuclear program underground in a way that would make them harder for Israel and the United States to strike. We could not agree to that, Cohen said. Therefore, we had to act. For NPR News, I'm Itai Stern in Tel Aviv.
It is Election Day today in a handful of states. These are the first major primary contests for the 2026 midterm elections, including in North Carolina and Texas. NPR's Stephen Fowler reports on what is at stake.
Texas and North Carolina are large states with diverse populations that will provide an early glimpse of how voters are feeling about the current political landscape. A handful of incumbent lawmakers, like North Carolina Democratic Representative Valerie Foushee, Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn, and others, face serious primary challengers. A number of races could be competitive in the general election and help determine which party controls each chamber of Congress. Primary results and voter turnout in these states will set the stage for a midterm election where affordability and immigration enforcement are key issues. Stephen Fowler, NPR News, Atlanta.
It is also primary election day in Arkansas. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is her first hearing since 2 protesters were shot and killed in Minneapolis by federal immigration officers in January. Since then, the Department of Homeland Security is partially shut down. Democratic lawmakers are demanding changes in how immigration officers will pass a funding measure for the agency. Noem is castigating the Democrats.
The latest Democrat-led shutdown of DHS is reckless, it's unnecessary, and it undermines the American national security, and it harms the men and women who work at DHS and their families.
Democrats have issued 10 demands to change the behavior of immigration officers, but Republicans have pushed back on some of them. That includes a Democratic demand that immigration agents stop wearing masks to conceal their identities. On Wall Street, the Dow was down more than 1,100 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. One of Boston's busiest streets has been shut down due to a gas leak. According to a statement from the Boston Police Department, officers closed North Grove Street by Cambridge Street in downtown Boston this morning. This is the intersection that's right in front of the main entrance to the Massachusetts General Hospital at 275 Cambridge Street. Anyone headed to Mass General by vehicle will be impacted by this closure. We'll keep an eye on it and let you know when things open back up. Gas prices are climbing slightly in Massachusetts, but experts say it's not yet clear how much of that is due to seasonal demand and the war in Iran. New England Public Media's Nirvani Williams has more.
Demand for gas has picked up in the last few weeks, says spokesperson for AAA Northeast Mark Shieldrop.
So prices could climb a little bit more, but if it's only a few cents here and there, it's really tough to quantify how much of that is seasonal expectation and how much of that is disruption caused by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East.
Shieldrop says Iran isn't a major importer of oil to the U.S., so we won't be looking at supply issues here. But, he says, Iran has a lot of control over shipping routes in the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage of water between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Shieldrop notes if cargoes aren't coming in and out of that strait, then there could be significant repercussions around the world, including higher gas prices in the U.S.
Nirvani Williams with Connecting the Commonwealth. Well, a wintry mix rolls in this afternoon, bringing snow, sleet, and freezing rain, high in the low to mid-30s. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR be the model for high-quality journalism in the 21st century. This is NPR.
Houston Brady, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're still not back at the Boston Public Library, but we are hoping to return or planning on returning March 10th after studio upgrades there at the same day that the mayor of Boston will join us at the Boston Public Library. The governor is scheduled to join us also at the library on March 27th. Hello again, Jim.
And we have finally heard back from the Attorney General, and they're working to schedule a date. We'll let you know. We're starting the show today with more of your reactions to war in the Middle East. Some developments since we signed off yesterday. The State Department is urging Americans in over a dozen Middle East countries to return to the States. 2 of our embassies have closed in the Gulf. Israel took the opportunity to attack Lebanon while closing the humanitarian border with Gaza. Meanwhile, and at the same time, the stock market, I'm just looking at CNN, is dropping dramatically. Gas prices, oil prices are up. Meanwhile, yesterday, First Lady Melania Trump actually presided over a UN Security Council meeting. Here's part of what she said.
A nation that makes learning sacred protects its future. A society that excludes vast segments of its population can realize only a fraction of its potential.
What nation is she talking about exactly?
I don't know.
So the lines are open several days into this combat at 877-301-8970. The U.S.-Israel alliance is seemingly reshaping the regional order. Oh, always sit home, watch it on TV or social media. How are you taking it all in? There are questions of legality in Trump's strike, as in the Maduro extraction, not to mention law-breaking Trump does at home. Is he using one to distract from the Epstein files? What do you make of the whole situation there, including the killing of civilians? There's been virtually no discussion of the bombing of that girls' school, nor an explanation as to why it happened. Any angle you want to take several days into this conflict in Iran at 877-301-8970. Remember, we're going to talk to John King in about 20 minutes or so. The whole issue is, was there an imminent threat? And while Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, is going out of his way to try to convince people on Capitol Hill that is true, Pentagon briefings, Trump's Pentagon briefings just a few days ago suggested there was no imminent threat. That's one issue that needs focus. 2, Ukraine, which obviously this administration does not give a damn about. The more munitions are directed towards a war in Iran and in the Middle East there, the fewer that are available to supply to NATO, to in turn provide for Ukraine. And then, I just got to get this out of my system. I promise I won't.
What? What's that?
The title of Melania Trump's leading of the UN Security Council, which, by the way, has never been done by a first lady of any country in the world.
Another one of those unprecedented things we always talk about.
It's called Peace Through Education. Peace is in her husband bombing his 7th country in 14 months, and education as in he is cutting funding for education. By the way, the other beautiful part of this, she uses the word race, prejudice, gender, all of which are banned by the Trump administration in terms of his staff people, his employees. But I guess to her credit, she used them somewhat naively yesterday. The number is 877-301-8970. And I will say one thing before Marjorie takes over here. I have yet to hear a compelling, credible explanation as to why we're doing this. Jim McGovern, who is as serious a legislator as Trump is an unserious president, he said to us yesterday what we've been saying. It's Epstein. He says, I don't have any proof of this, but I'm assuming it's Epstein diversion. And I have to say, I think it's diversion from a lot of things.
I don't know.
Tariffs, Epstein, whatever. Do you have any confidence he has anything who knows what he's doing?
Well, I thought Heather Cox Richardson, a historian at Boston College who writes a great Substack column, she quoted The Economist as saying that the president seemed to be workshopping the causes of her attacks, throwing spaghetti at the wall. I mean, other people have said Netanyahu pushed Trump's hand. He talked him into it. Rubio, of course, says that's not true. And other people have just said that after the spectacular performance, I mean, we have obviously a very capable military in the United States of America, and that Trump was so enamored of what he was able to do in Venezuela that he's decided to try to do it in Iran. But I don't know why he's doing it. I just wish there's another theory, also espoused by Heather Cox Richardson and other people, that Trump is just following the directives from hosts at Fox News. Apparently, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and Brian Kilmeade have all urged Trump to bomb Iran, and then they lavish praise on him when he finally did it. So that's good enough for me. That's another theory. And also, there's a Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman in the weeds as well. There's been some theorizing that he wanted this to happen.
Well, he left out the major player who wanted it to happen is Netanyahu.
I just said that.
Oh, you did? Who is really smart. And I think has the ability to manipulate Trump as well as any world leader, if not, well, maybe not as well as Putin, but as well as virtually any world leader. And so we want to get your reactions to several days of this war. I'm sorry. One
of the Netanyahu theories is that Netanyahu decided he was going to bomb Iran whether we did or not, and so that was that Trump decided to join in, as he did earlier when Israel bombed Iran.
877-301-8097. Your reaction to any part of this first few days. And by the way, he says we have Trump said yesterday, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, even longer. We have munitions for a, quote, forever war. He says, who knows? Chris in Gloucester, you're first. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Yeah, Operation Epstein Fury, absolutely. The reasons they're giving are preposterous. You mentioned Heather Cox Richardson. Another thing that's come up, she had a couple of days ago, was that the Trump administration squashing a DEA investigation into Epstein during his first term that was tying Epstein to drug trafficking, sex trafficking. So, and if Netanyahu talked Trump into it, he did it for the same reason, because I think they both talked and said, gee, if we stay at war, we can both stay in office.
Well, it's clearly the case in terms of Netanyahu.
Thank you. That was those are some great theories, too. Temi from Haverhill says she just found out her nephew is due to be heading to Kuwait. It was supposed to be in June, but the fear is it may pull him in early. And, of course, Kuwait is where the military personnel, I think we're up to 6 people now in total, were killed. So, obviously, she's very concerned there in about her nephew.
You know, I've mentioned in a few days that the notion that we are as guilty as some, have discussions about Trump's actions and behavior as if he is a semi-normal person. This is a guy who's at a Medal of Honor ceremony yesterday. He opens by explaining why he declared war on Iran, which, didn't convince me, was semi-coherent. And what does he start talking about immediately after that?
The curtains in the ballroom.
The gold curtains, how much he loves. There are people in there who are Medal of Honor recipients. He has just said our hearts and whatevers are with the families of, I think there were 4 troops who had been killed as of yesterday. And then he starts talking about the gold drapes that he's so proud of. This is not a normal, sane, healthy person, and he's got a lot of power. Rob in Connecticut, hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I think it's just fun how we have this, we have to analyze all this stuff with, a normal tone or some kind of sober lens, when it's, just because we're on, the post conspiracy theory era of the early internet, where all these QAnon type craziness became a normal thing that we had to be whoa, what the heck is going on? And now if you write this all out on paper, it seems like a conspiracy theory. In the way you talk about it, it makes you feel insane. But it's these are there's evidence before all of this stuff happening, and like Netanyahu's like plans are like open out in the public, cooperation with like the American government and like the Epstein files, like all this stuff, like you feel like insane just like saying this. And it's like, we have to be like report, like, and you listen to the news and it's like, well, this is one fact that's happening. And you're like, okay, well, maybe that'll mean something, but it doesn't, because no one cares, or no one's good. They're just doing what they want, and we'll talk and comment about it.
You know, Rob, you know what'll make you feel better? One of our favorite people is Margaret Sullivan, who we're lucky enough to have phone from time to time.
Oh,
you
yeah.
should follow her. Or subscribe to her Substack, because she is saying a variation on you, but of what you're saying, but in a critical way that's straight, when this is not any way or near a normal situation nor a normal president. Rob, thanks for your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Did you see that quote from Hegseth about what we're doing here when he was kind of cheerleading this whole thing along?
Yesterday morning?
This was also from Cox Richardson's column. He celebrated, of course, and then he condemned, quote, so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercises, no politically correct wars. We fight to win. We don't waste time or lives.
He's like a macho little boy.
I mean,
who has these war toys that is putting our people at great risk, as evidenced by what happened to 6 families already. I mean, it is staggering that this guy is in the position. You know what I was reading this morning? I know it's a total waste of time. I was reading comments about Donald Trump years ago by all the people who work for him now. Marco Rubio, right at the top of the list, one of his great quotes with, it will end badly. And the guy now is this sycophantic, and maybe, comparably speaking, one of his more competent people, but again, willing to totally toe the line. And the best example, Marjorie and I cite it all the time, the incredible work of USAID, which he as a senator supported more than any Republican. He was responsible, at least he did the effectuating of its elimination. Keenan in Salem, hi.
Hello.
Hello to you.
Hi, I just wanted to try and maybe potentially simplify this a little bit, because
Sure.
they being Marco Rubio and Mike Johnson as well, did give explicit quote-unquote justifications for the imminent threat. And I think it's almost even stupider than all the other reasons we're giving, which is to say that they said that there was a credible imminent threat on U.S. bases in the area should anyone have attacked. And that Mike Johnson today very explicitly said that they had all the evidence they needed to say that Israel was attacking, and I quote, with or without U.S. support.
Right.
So their point in that is to the credit of the Democrats as well, is that is a quote-unquote imminent threat on the U.S. bases in the area, but it is the very, very Orwellian imminent threat of defense against Israeli-U.S. attack. That is like the most unhinged reasons I've heard for an engagement in a war of this caliber possibly ever from this country. But I served in the U.S. Navy for 6 years in intelligence, and that is literally where this administration is right now. There is an imminent threat if Israel attacks on our bases in the area, and so in order to, quote-unquote, prevent the imminent attack, we attack first in support of the Israeli action that's already planned and going to go on with or without us. And now we're literally just dragged into a major war on Netanyahu's behalf. And here we are.
Kenny, you said it beautifully. That was an excellent call. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keenan. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Has there ever been ever. We haven't been around that long. The ability to manipulate this man is just staggering.
Well, you've heard that a million times. He goes with the last person in the room, whatever the last person in the room says. Unfortunately, it's been that lunatic Stephen Miller lately.
Or the person who's the most fawning. I mean, if you really... Do you know that when I was listening to Hegseth yesterday morning at 8 a.m., I know this is not atypical, but I'm making a point because it, in fact, is typical. Everything is the greatest. Everything is the most vicious, fearsome. ever. Everything, and why is that? Because the audience of one needs to hear superlatives about everything he touches. It is really incredible. And by the way, just so people are paying attention, I know you'll know this, we're only 14 months into a 48-month term of office. 14 months.
I know.
Not even a third.
I know.
Not
I don't know if
even
I'm
a
going to
third.
make it.
Oh, it's a quarter. Well, it's a little more than a quarter, actually.
John in Westford, thank you for calling.
Hey, John, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we went to war purely for the oil, not to benefit the U.S., but to keep the oil out of China. And same thing with Venezuela. We had to get this black market oil out of there because the BRICS nations were going to form a new currency to replace the U.S. petrodollar.
So do you
US,
think, John, you mentioned this yesterday, I think, do you think, assuming your analysis is right, does that merit an invasion by the United States and Israel, or no? Does that goal?
No, I think it's a big, big plus. I would say without it, we probably wouldn't have gone to war. But we did it with Libya. We overthrew Gaddafi because he wanted to make the dinar the African Union currency to trade in oil. So we've done it before. And the U.S., unfortunately, we don't make anything. We're just a bank for the world. And our economy would tank if there was something to replace the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, I have to say, John, though, the notion of denying oil to China when Trump is so enamored of the Xis and the Putins of the world doesn't do it for me. But thank you for your opinion. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
You know, I was hearing yesterday that despite the overwhelming power you would think of Russia, although we have criticized its military in this Ukraine situation, they're losing 1,000 people a day, the Russians in Ukraine.
Well, they say so far there have been, 4 years, there have been their best estimate is 1.2 million casualties, which is roughly 1,000, not deaths, casualties, 1,000 a day.
Yeah.
And roughly a third of those are supposedly are deaths.
John in Georgetown, thank you for calling.
Hello, John.
Hello, how are you?
Well enough.
I just have to say that, if anybody who knows me will know who I am, because I say this over. I've always felt that Donald Trump is sort of like chemotherapy.
Meaning?
It's just an absolutely horrible experience. But on the other hand, he sometimes kills the cancer. And I just really think that this is a wonderful time for everyone in the world that to defang these people in Iran. I think, I could be wrong, but I think that they were not going to be deterred from their missile development. I hope there's a new government. I hope this means wonderful things for the people of Iran. But what I really care about is defanging Iran.
When has he killed the cancer before Saturday? What other examples do you have there, John?
Well, no, I don't want to be a wise guy. Just in the sense that, for instance, in the big, beautiful bill, for instance, to go back to that, some of the agencies that, including NPR, by the way, who I have not understood why we spend money on it for years. Other Republicans wouldn't come in and do that. They'd say, well, why am I going to take a political hit for?
Well, I'll give you I just see you have only one example, and I'll give you, it's a small dollar example, but an important one. I'll give you the reasons why he didn't kill a cancer, but probably caused one, is you live in a community where if we didn't have any money, you'd probably have a variety of news sources available to you. A huge percentage of the country, but PBS and NPR. So if you consider that to be a good thing, with all due respect, we have a difference that he is, I can't think of a situation, I'm probably missing one, where, to use your words, the cancer has been killed by action by this president this time or the first. John, thanks for the call.
You know, I mean, there is a hope, and I think a lot of people are hoping that somehow the Iranian people will be able to rise up against the security forces and all the layers of Ayatollah-like leaders that are still alive despite this decapitation, as we're all calling it.
Does that justify what we did?
No, but I'm just saying, I don't think people, I think a lot of people would hope that could happen.
What evidence do you have that that's about to happen?
I don't, and it's going to be extremely difficult, and we can talk about it more later. But obviously, it would be great for those people. But
there was a far more established opposition in Venezuela. Have they taken over their country?
No.
Same administration that Maduro headed is now running the country, and there's no reason to think that the Islamic Republic in a new iteration through new humans is going to be running Iran. I hope so too, but a hope is a hell of a, I'm not saying you're saying this, but a hope is a hell of a way to defend an action that has incredible costs, human, dollar, strategic, and other costs for this country.
Ellen in Hanover, thank you for calling.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, guys. I think it's very simple, and then the trickle down is a little bit more complicated. I think that this is just the quid pro quo of a personal deal that enemies of Iran found the right family to be able to manipulate and bribe. That family is getting billions and billions of dollars from all of the surrounding countries, and the negotiated deal was, we will provide American military might provided by the American taxpayer and the American blood, and we will take out your enemy in Iran, and you will give us resorts and condos and golf courses, and already have given billions of dollars personally to Kushner and the Sons. And that was the big deal. And then you can trickle it down and say, the neocons who want regime change or anything like that, the tip of the iceberg, the reason for it is they personally are going to make money off of it. And it was a deal brokered as a bribe.
Well, for what it's worth, you mentioned the other day.
That's absolutely one
Rachel
of the theories.
Maddow was the first person I had to say that. A number are saying it, and you're added to the list. You said it well, Ellen. Thank you for your analysis. Appreciate it.
The money.
Well, and for those who were, upset with Ellen or others for having said that, there is a history with this administration of. There was a situation, that whole bridge thing we talked about last week. The most recent example: guy gave $1 million to a Trump PAC. 2 days later, or 3 days later, had a meeting with Trump advisors, and 3 days later, Trump came out against the bridge. There was a competing bridge for this $1 million investor. This is an administration where you can buy an outcome. I hope they didn't buy a war, as the caller just suggested.
I don't know.
But it is not like history would suggest that he is averse to that sort of thing.
No, I don't know why they did it. There are a lot of different theories. It would be good if we knew why, but we don't know why. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit more about this with John King, and we're going to talk later with a filmmaker who spent a lot of time reporting in Iran as well to get his take. But coming up right now, CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. We're going to talk with him about Congress is being briefed today about Iran, different versions of why we went there, and two big races that could be indicative of where we're going in November. Terms, one in North Carolina, one in Texas. I am Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NAPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, astronaut Cady Coleman has spent months orbiting Earth, watching the planet from a place few people and even fewer women have ever been. As part of our Women's History Month coverage, she joins us to talk about her journey beyond gravity and her book, Sharing Space, reflecting on exploration, curiosity, and helping to open the hatch for those ready to follow. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com. Direct Federal, member NCUA. And Riverstone International U.S. LLC, located in Beverly, Massachusetts. A Riverstone International company acquiring legacy insurance globally since 2010. Learn more at rsml.co.uk.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We will finally return to the library post-studio upgrades there on Tuesday, March 10th. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, the man behind the reporting project All Over the Map. Good morning, John. Good to see you.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday, the first primary night of the great
Yes,
we'll get to that.
We're very excited about this. But before we get to the first primary night and who's competing and where, Congress is getting briefed today about what's happening in this war with Iran. Is it going to be the usual Dems versus Republicans, or what's the story?
Publicly, it has been largely Dems versus Republicans. Most Republicans have rallied around the president, but I will tell you, Republicans, especially the serious-minded Republicans, have the same questions you've been asking in the last conversation. Look, this is a war of choice by a president of the United States who ran for office, and his brand has been to not get into foreign interventions, to not get into what could be endless wars. And last night he was saying he doesn't rule out the possibility of boots on the ground. He doesn't know how long this is going to go, that we haven't hit them the hardest yet. That's still to come. As you were discussing, there have been shifting explanations about why in the first place. And a lot of those explanations have been shot down by these things we call facts. So they have a lot of explaining to do. And I don't mean to minimize it, but you do have, at least publicly, most of the Republicans rallying around him, and even some Democrats who say, look, this is a case where, there's a lot of nuance here. These are bad actors. And, if positive change were to come in Iran, that would be a good thing. But it's the means to the ends, or how did we get here? And we're early on in this. And trust me, the big questions on Capitol Hill are why and when does it end?
One of my, the montage that CNN put together is so terrific, where Trump and Hegseth repeatedly call this a war, and every member of Congress on the Republican Party who CNN includes say, it's not a war, because obviously they can't shirk their responsibility. If it is incredible. Can you remember a time that we've been involved in even anything roughly comparable where the President of the United States has not addressed the nation nor taken a question this many days in?
Not in my lifetime doing this, no. Nothing close, especially as you send American men and women into combat, as you have all the American men and women and our allies in the embassies and other institutions around the region that are going to come under attack, that the President of the United States choose to communicate by videos that he produces, without taking questions, or at least just, maybe you don't take questions in the middle of a sensitive operation, but you come forward to own it, if you will. That's a sign of leadership. Whether you agree or disagree out there, whether we agree or disagree, whether we have questions or not, it has been a tradition that we see our president, that we see our commander-in-chief in those moments, and this president just operates very differently.
I want to repeat what I said yesterday. This president thought it was appropriate to give an Oval Office address to the nation after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, but not appropriate to give a comparable thing when he is essentially declared war on another country.
John, and maybe it's changed by now, but I read this morning that the United Kingdom, Americans are advised to get out of there, but there's been problems getting flights out of there because the commercial airlines have been caught in, having to cancel flights because of this war. The United Kingdom is making efforts to get their government to get their citizens out of there. But we haven't done that yet. Couldn't they send government planes or something in there to get Americans out? They're not doing that.
That may well be what happens in the end. I think this is another one of the questions about, what was the plan? And did you have plans for the contingencies? Did you just assume the Iranians were not going to do what they're doing? I mean, we saw this last time. What do? They don't have the military capability of the United States, but they do have these inexpensive and relatively effective drones, and they're going after the embassy in Riyadh. They're going after the embassies in Kuwait. They're going after U.S. military bases and the military bases and institutions in the countries that have allowed the United States to have those military bases. That's the playbook they have used in the past. So that's again one of the questions on Capitol Hill is why did you seem a little flat-footed to not have gotten American personnel out in advance, or at least got them into a more protected place, or at least have a plan to get them out. Because of course the commercial airlines are going to say it's not safe to go in there, and we're going to. First they stopped them. Now there's a limited number back, but nothing of the capacity necessary to get that many people out.
So, John, CNN does a poll after the initial action in Iran. 59% of Americans disapprove of the initial decision. Only 41 approve. Strong disapproval is 2-1, 31 to 16%. So I say to myself, we just spoke about Republican support for this in Congress. Of things of late, Donald Trump loses a Supreme Court case and immediately on tariffs and immediately reinstates tariffs, which the American people don't like. He is proceeding with a war that the American people don't like. He is refusing to disclose files on Epstein, which the American people want. It's almost like he's saying, I want to make this as difficult for my party in the midterms as is humanly possible. Is there not a point at which the Republicans say, as scared as we are of this guy, they can't primary us anymore. We finished our primaries. We're all going to lose our jobs because we're just silent in the face of this anti-majoritarian action. No?
Well, no, but, or yes, but is the answer to that, I guess. Look, and again, I don't mean to make light of it, because a piece of this, we can make jokes about tariffs, I guess, although if you're in a business that has been given whiplash and economic problems because of that. So I have to be careful. I sometimes get a little flippant heading into the political environment, and I don't want to be, because we're in the middle of a life and death, and the tariffs can be life and death to a small business out there. Some of the inconsistencies of Trump. However, tonight's the first primary night, Jim. These primaries run through August and in a couple of cases actually into September. And you have very few Republicans. Only the ones who are retiring so far have been the ones willing to stand up and say, I don't like this. I don't question this. They're going to pay. We're going to find out. I was about to say they're going to pay a price for this. This is the beginning. These primaries and the midterm election year is the beginning of the competition for the post-Trump Republican Party. And we're going to find out more. The question is, will it take until right up to the midterms, or maybe after the midterms? Will it affect, everyone says J.D. Vance is the heir apparent. Well, is J.D. Vance the heir apparent if they get trounced, shellacked in the midterm elections? He may still be, on paper, he may still have the Trump fundraising, advantage in terms of that network. But you will have a lot more Republicans running for president if they get shellacked in the midterm elections than you will if they come out relatively even or better than historical performance. But that's 8 months down the road. So let's watch what happens in Texas tonight. Let's watch what happens in North Carolina tonight. Let's watch maybe the next couple of decent-sized state primaries where you have some of these, does the Trump endorsement still carry the weight that it used to carry? Do you see a MAGA establishment split anywhere in the Republican Party? In a month or two, we might be having more conversations about, are Republicans getting more willing to stand up? But right now, you don't see that much of it. You just don't, because of what you said, that Trump has proven in the past that if you speak up, he will use his financial advantage, the primary calendar, and anything else he has to try to crush you.
Well, let's talk about this Texas race. I mean, this is going to be really exciting tonight, John. I'm looking forward to it. What's at stake? What's going on? Who are the candidates?
Well, we've had this conversation forever. Can a Democrat turn Texas blue, right? The Republicans have dominated Texas for a very, very long time. The Republicans have used that power when it comes to drawing state legislative districts and congressional districts to maximize their power, to make it even harder for Democrats to win by the way they've drawn the lines. But you have these statewide elections. So you have John Cornyn, the Republican incumbent. He's from the George W. Bush Karl Rove, Texas, way back when Bush was governor, and he was there. But he, like many Republicans, has tried to draft along with Trump, even though he disagrees with a lot of things. His main opponent in the primary is Ken Paxton, who is, let's just say, an ethically challenged, character challenged, try to be polite, the state attorney general, but he's a MAGA favorite. You also have a congressman running there as well. Most people believe, and we get to count votes tonight, it's one of the great privileges of my life, you count votes and try to explain them. Most people believe that Republican race will head to a runoff. In Texas, you have to get 50+1 or you have a runoff. Let's see what happens. And Trump is, Trump has studiously stayed out of it, if you will, but the MAGA base is more with Paxton there. And then you have a fascinating race on the Democratic side where you have a lot of people are trying to make this the liberal moderate split. I would not do that. Tallarico and Crockett are very similar, actually. They're both left of center. They have some differences here and there. She's more of a firebrand. She's more of a fighter. She's more of I'm on social media. I like to fight with Trump. I like to fight with the Republicans. He's more of I think by being a little kinder and gentler, same policies more or less, but a little kinder and gentler in the public rhetoric. Maybe that helps me reach out to moderates. Let's see how that one goes. The Congresswoman Crockett, has been leading in the polling there. The Tallarico people think, that they're better organized, and maybe some of the early voting will help them. We'll count the votes tonight and see. There are also a couple of really interesting, to me, congressional primaries in that state as well.
We would be remiss if we didn't point out two of Jasmine Crockett's most legendary quotes. She called the governor of Texas, who was in a wheelchair, Governor Hot Wheels. She claimed it had nothing to do with his being in a wheelchair, but I don't know. I'm a little suspicious.
He's now using that expression.
Yeah, he's embraced it, which is a clever thing for him to do, I guess. But then she got into a little tete-a-tete with Marjorie Taylor Greene, when Marjorie Taylor Greene made fun of Jasmine Crockett's fake eyelashes, and Jasmine Crockett replied by calling Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying she had a badly built butch body. It was which some people may find over the top. I don't know.
So, John,
I think the guys in this conversation should stay out of that one. That's my advice.
Well, we have. John, you mentioned there's some congressional races there too. Is Gonzalez? I mean, what on the congressional front in Texas may be indicative of something?
So there's two races with a Gonzalez on the ballot. Let's start with the Republican Gonzalez. That's Tony Gonzalez, who, again, we have a lot of ethical challenges when we come to the Texas Republican voting today. He's the congressman who, tragically had a staffer committed suicide, and there are text messages between the two of them. He has denied this, but there's a relationship. She says there was a relationship. Her husband has said there was a relationship, and that's what led to this horrible suicide. He says the facts will still come out. The Republican leadership has not withdrawn its endorsement of this Republican congressman, and they are all privately hoping he loses his primary tonight. There's a ripple to that. If Tony Gonzalez loses his primary tonight and then decides to hell with it and resigns Congress, well, then guess what? Until November, there goes your House Republican majority right there. And so, So we'll see what happens in that one. The district I was in a couple of weeks ago is Vicente Gonzalez. He's the Democratic incumbent in Texas 34. That's one of the districts where they redistricted in Texas, thinking we're going to pick up 5 seats. Well, number one, Vicente Gonzalez does have a progressive opponent in the primary there. Everyone thinks he'll be fine. Let's see if that happens and he gets renominated. But that's for me is one of the tests of, does the Trump endorsement still carry as much weight? Trump has endorsed a former prosecutor, a military veteran named Eric Flores. Running for the Republican nomination is also Mayra Flores, who's a former congresswoman. She had a neighboring seat. She's run against Gonzalez before. And so that's a place for me just to watch. That is a overwhelmingly majority Latino district. Texas Republicans were betting that, Trump's increase in Latino support from 16 to 20 to 24 was going to stay with them. We've seen throughout 2025 and in early 2026 that is not the case. And so the Latino vote could be a huge decisive power in this midterm election year, including maybe flipping the plan of Texas Republicans to make all these huge gains. So tonight's sort of a curtain raiser on what I think is a fascinating year.
So of I'm sorry.
North Carolina?
Yeah, but we should put it in context. My understanding is the Democrats need to win 4 Senate seats to take control of the Senate. And the ones that are apparently at the top of the list, I guess, are Maine, Alaska, Ohio, and now North Carolina, where a pretty popular Democratic former governor is in a race there. What's the state of affairs in North Carolina?
Another big test there. I think that's more of a November question than a tonight question. But Roy Cooper, the Democratic, very popular former governor, is your Democratic candidate there. A more moderate Democrat in a state like North Carolina, where again, if you study all the demographics and you look at where Trump's weakest in the suburbs, when he tends to be alienating people, it's a place where Roy Cooper has proven he can win statewide when it comes to a state race. It's been very hard for Democrats to win statewide for a federal race. So we'll see how that goes. Trump's candidate in the Republican primary is Michael Whatley, who was his RNC chairman, who helped, who still to this day is saying that, they stole the 2020 election from Trump. He's one of those, as is Ken Paxton, by the way, in Texas. However, there are a couple of much more MAGA candidates running in the Republican primary. I assume Whatley will win the nomination, but I'm really interested to see By how much? To see, are people participating when you think it's done, right? When you think the guy's going to win and he's going to be the nominee, do you even show up in the primary? And if so, do you see mega unhappiness with Trump's pick in this case? Because Michael Whatley, before he became Trump's choice in this race, was a much more traditional establishment Republican. He just realized that the future of the party was Trump, and he kind of Velcroed himself there.
We only have 45 seconds left. I'm sure you don't ignore it. We have tended to ignore the fact there's still a partial shutdown, and the Democrats apparently are sticking by their demands that ICE be reformed. Is any progress being made at all? We have about 30 seconds. No, I
don't see any progress right now. Kristi Noem is right. It's before the Congress today, for example, and she's getting pressed about what happened in Minneapolis, what happened there. I see, and she's trying to turn it back, saying the Democrats are hurting America by not reopening. But I've just seen people doing traditional politics at each other so far, and no progress on that one.
Do you think they'll ask her about firing the pilot over the misplaced blanket?
I'll get back to you if they do.
Just curious about that one. Okay.
We'll be watching it tonight, John. Yeah. That's one of the comforts of Election Day.
That's right.
As anxiety-provoking as it always is.
Yeah, I guess Corey Lewandowski was very upset that someone had misplaced her blanket, blamed the pilot. Apparently charged into the cockpit.
That's
and the pilot said, you got to sit down until the plane reaches the right elevation. And it was a big story.
So he went back to the special compartment on the plane.
That supposed immigrant detainee plane looked pretty damn good to me, John. Anyway, we're going to go.
John, good to see you. We'll be watching tonight. Take care.
Okay. We've been speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, behind the opening project all over the map. Coming up after this quick break, how are nonprofits adapting in the age of Trump? We'll talk with Lee Pelton, president of the Boston Foundation, about that and the fate of universities and law firms that bent the knee to Trump. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Massachusetts has 26 gateway cities.
Worcester, Springfield, Lowell, Brockton, Lynn.
This year, we're going to get
Fall River, Lawrence, Haverhill.
26 and 26.
Malden, Taunton, Revere, Peabody, Chicopee.
If you live in one,
Methuen, Everett, Barnstable, Attleboro, Salem, Leominster.
We want to hear from you.
Pittsfield, Fitchburg, Westfield, Chelsea, Holyoke.
Visit gbhnews.org/gateway cities.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering short courses on critical topics led by world-class faculty. Professionals can get up to speed on AI, innovation, cybersecurity, and operational strategy. More at executive.mit.edu. And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I assume you know we're not at the library, but we will return to our normal library schedule on Tuesday, March 10th. Studio upgrades being finished. The mayor will join us on the 10th, that Tuesday at the library from 12 to 1. And on the 27th of March, the governor will join us at the library from 11 till noon. We're still working on the AG. As I said, we heard from her yesterday, so we're hopeful we'll have a date soon. Joined now in Studio 3 by Lee Pelton. Lee is the president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, also a member of GBH's Board of Trustees, previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College. Hello there, Lee Pelton. Good to see you.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
So you've got this pretty neat thing called the Meeting the Moment campaign. Tell us what that's all about.
We do. Well, we have a program. We have several Meeting the Moment programs, and the one that you're referring to is called Meeting the Moment, supporting our immigrant neighbors. It's a three-prong approach. First is that we're providing support dollars for organizations that are providing legal aid for immigrant organizations and families. We're also providing direct aid to immigrant serving organizations. And then three, and maybe the most important part of this is I would call it truth-telling. So the Boston Indicators, which both of you know very well, and I hope the city knows very well, is providing data. We'll be providing data that will tell the truth about our immigrant communities. So I'll give you a couple of data points that are rarely mentioned in these discussions. That is, first of all, that 18%, almost 20% of immigrants make up the total residencies in Boston. So almost 1 in 5 of in Massachusetts, almost 1 in 5 of our citizens here are immigrants, which is a significant account. And then here's a whopping number, $8 billion. $8 billion is how much immigrant individuals and families pay in local, state, and federal taxes in the Commonwealth. So it's, their contributions are really very, very significant.
Do you think, how fact-averse is America right now? I mean, one of the examples I think of is not on the economic front, but Trump and Noam and Homan love to go out of their way to talk about they're all rapists and murderers, horrible criminals. And I think most sane people have learned that people who are undocumented in this country are actually far less likely to commit a crime than a citizen of the United States is. That seems to have moved few. I hope I'm wrong, but I think I know it's a weird question. How much do facts matter in debates in the age of Trump, Lee Pelton?
Well, very little, obviously. We live with a federal government today that is mean-spirited, imperialistic, and in some instance unlawful. And it's overseen by an American president who would be king, to coin a phrase. And their tools are intimidation and incarceration, and in some instances, as we know, with 2 people in Minnesota, death. And so, first of all, I want to say I'm very grateful for our mayor and very grateful for the governor of the Commonwealth in their willingness to stand up and to tell the truth. And there comes a time when you have to stand. And I'm reminded of what Martin Luther King Jr. said in his famous speech in opposition to the Vietnam War. There comes a time when you have to tell the truth, and when silence is a betrayal. And we are at that time in history where silence is a betrayal. And so we have to, all of us, people of goodwill, we have to stand, and we have to not be silent.
And by the way, let me be clear. When I ask that question, not only are we both big fans of Boston Indicators, we're also fans of facts. And even if it's not a fact-friendly time, it's an obligation on people like you, and I'd like to think us, to dwell in the world of facts as much as we can. Can I ask you one last question about this meeting in the moment, the new phase of this on immigration? Yeah. Is this, did you go out and say to potential donors, we need new funding for this, or is this come out of existing money that you have?
It's both. One of the things that we're able to do at the Boston Foundation, not only in this instance but other instances, is that we invite our donors to make gifts that are aligned with ours. We're constituted by donor advised funds, and so these are funds that you give away, and we invest those dollars, same as you would at Fidelity. And although we don't have all those resources, but it's these donor advised funds, and so we seek to be in partnership with our donor advised funds, and they will be in partnership with us. So the short answer is we do both. Some of our own money, because we have a private endowment, we can tap into, but we also hope. We also encourage our donors to be in partnership with us.
I'm just happy that donors are supportive of things for to help people who are in disfavor in this country live better lives. That's
they are, and I
should
say, I'm very, very grateful for our donor-advised folks. They are really, really wonderful.
We're talking to Lee Pelton, head of the Boston Foundation.
As people may know, the Trump administration has been very tough on nonprofits. The Globe published a piece where they quoted this guy that runs the Tennessee nonprofit network, 1,800 nonprofit members, training, etc. And he said, I've been having these coffee meetings with people who are just absolutely beside themselves about what's happening and what's to come, and they're looking for some optimism. I don't have much to give them. Right. So talk about what the Trump administration has meant for nonprofits and how difficult the rebuild might be if they ever can rebuild.
Well, last year we partnered with the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network and other organizations, it was Mass Inc. polling actually, to do a survey of the 500 nonprofit leaders. And the results were not surprising because the survey, the respondents said they thought that their organizations would be worse off today than they were before Trump took office. And so we've seen some of the preliminary results. 85% say the populations that they serve are worse off today than they were a year ago. 2/3 say that they're facing a greater demand for service than a year ago. 92%, over 90% across every sector said the actions from the federal government over the last year have made it harder to do their jobs. And 88% in the past year said that the Trump administration has had a negative impact on their organizational staff.
Can I talk about this? This polling is going to be released later this week that you're citing, right?
Correct.
So if people are wondering, it's going to be. And I'm glad you're willing to share at this stage. Yeah. That's the thing that is totally new to me and most depressing of all of this. That 88% in general in that nonprofit hierarchy say there's been a negative impact on the well-being of staff. 95% in BIPOC-led. These are the human. We often talk, maybe not you, we often talk about organizations as if there aren't people doing all the work that makes the organizations take. It's a thing. Right. But obviously none of this functions without the incredible effort of generally underpaid, overworked, unbelievably dedicated people. 88% said negative impact on the well-being of their staff, 95% in BIPOC-led. How do you do your work when you're feeling under assault?
Yeah, well, these are committed people, committed individuals. And I think in the face of this kind of environment that we're in now, probably inspires people to do their best work. I know that's true at the Boston Foundation.
But as I said about 20 minutes ago to Marjorie, we're 14 months into 48 months of this. This is not like we only have to wait another month.
Why do you have to keep reminding us
Well,
of this,
I'm just saying, it's really, I'm not, I in no way disagree with you because I am lucky enough to know a lot of people who do wonderful things at your place and in nonprofits. There's only so long you can handle the stress and pain of being under assault all the time for doing good things for people who are in need, Yeah,
we also have convenings. We're going to have one on Thursday, I think, as you pointed out.
To release the polling stuff. Yeah.
Yes, right. And there'll be a lot of people in that building. And so that's a time when people can come together and both commiserate, but also feel triumphant over, the successes that they've made. And so that, we'll still be here 48 months from now.
Well, Marjorie asked that, and you didn't address that part of her question, so let me put it back in front of you. I assume you got to deal with the here and now, which is, for example, with this meeting the moment, the immigration piece of the action is. But you also have to think about survival through, as I just said, 36 more months. Is that a focus of you and others in the nonprofit leadership part of the world?
In terms of survival?
Long-term survival, not just how do we get through this next week, month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, but how we make it through 2.5 more years.
Yeah, I don't worry about that so much. Maybe I do for, smaller organizations that are not well resourced and so on. But these organizations are really very resilient. The leaders are really very resilient. And I'm grateful for the work that they do.
So can I bring up another thing, which is one of our favorite discussions we have with you monthly is about capitulation. Yeah. And one of the reasons we like having you is because you're an anti-capitulation kind of guy. And we like to think we are too. Yeah. I want to just mention two incredible things. So Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, as he calls himself, has decided that they will no longer give funding to certain universities. That's not news. What is news is two of the places that in one case really buckled under, and another place sort of buckled under, that'd be Columbia and Brown, are both on the list of screwees, for lack of a better expression. So it shows what you got for bowing at the knee. Even better, because we discuss this a lot, the law firms, the Paul Weisses of the world, and others that capitulated, wake up today to find out that the lawsuit that Trump's Department of Justice filed against all the non-capitulating law firms, they're dropping. So if you didn't capitulate, you lose nothing. If you did capitulate, you agreed to these incredibly burdensome terms, and you got nothing out of it. What's your reaction to those two stories?
Well, they deserve it. Really, shame on them. Again,
do you think people take a lesson from that? I mean, who in the world of Trump, we talk about this a lot, individuals, not necessarily law firms.
Paul Weiss guy was in the Epstein files trying to get a job for his kid, right?
Karp, or whatever that guy's name is.
He wasn't a pro, he was a little squirrely.
But do you think people take a moral of this story away that you gain nothing by bowing down? Maybe you do in the short term, that day, that week, you gain nothing by capitulating to this man.
I can't answer for individuals. All I can say is that I hope that they take some lesson away from this. We have a federal administration, and there's mercurial. It's hard to keep up with the sort of pastiche of stuff that they throw at us every day.
Speaking of pastiche, we only have a minute or plus left. Do you have any thoughts on the invasion or the attack on Iran a couple of days in? Not so much as the head of the Boston Foundation, but as a citizen of the country and the world?
Well, my take is, I think, should be the take of everyone else. If you thought that this was going to be a single sort of surgical approach that involves two nations, or three, I guess, Israel, Iran, and America, you're just absolutely wrong. And I think those of us who were in opposition to this understood from history that this event that we, with Israel, began is spreading and will continue to spread, and it will impact many, many other nations and populations.
Lee Pelton, it's good to see you. And again, Thursday, if people are waiting for the full release of this really important survey about the state of affairs within the nonprofit world in Massachusetts, Thursday, it'll be released in toto, correct?
Yes,
great.
It will be. Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thanks
for sharing.
Pelton, as always.
Thanks so much.
And thank you for visiting our little studio here.
He said it was very intimate.
It's
we were thinking of dimming the lights when he came in, but we decided to keep it just like a...
It's very cozy. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
we're close
you.
together. I don't say it was necessarily romantic or anything like that.
We could make it romantic.
We could. Jim broadcast from a red room. You should tell Lee Pelton about that.
Let's not tell Lee Pelton about that. Thank you.
Okay.
Lee, thank you so much
for
your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
We've been speaking with Lee Pelton, President and CEO of the Boston Boston Foundation. He's also a member of GBH's Board of Trustees, previously served as the 12th president of Emerson College. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Make sure to tune in to the Fabulous 413 at 3. Our show continues here in Boston. We're going to talk with journalist Sebastian Walker. He spent weeks in Iran last year trying to get to the truth of Trump's first strikes on the country's nuclear capabilities. He spent a lot of time in Iran. We're going to talk to him about that, the nukes, and about the people of Iran. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The news and reporting you hear on GBH is made possible by the listeners who trust the GBH newsroom to deliver fact-based news and information every day. Support the journalism you trust. Pitch in online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Live Nation, presenting Celtic Woman, A New Era, at the Orpheum Theatre Thursday, March 5th. A show that combines the ensemble's traditional Irish sound with contemporary arrangements. Ticket info at CelticWoman.com. And Newbury Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newburycourt.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're not going to be at the Boston Public Library until March 10th, but on March 10th we'll be joined there by the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, and on March 27th, the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey, will join us. Hello, Jim.
Hello there, Marjorie. We're joined now by journalist Sebastian Walker, who's reported extensively from the Middle East. Late last year, he was the director, producer, and correspondent for a really powerful, important Frontline documentary, Strike on Iran, the Nuclear Question. It's available at pbs.org/frontline. In the film, he goes inside Iran to try and get the truth of the country's nuclear capabilities in partnership with the Washington Post and Bellingcat. Here's a clip of his interview with Rafael Grossi, head of the International Nuclear Watchdog Agency, the IAEA.
Here we have to be very careful what we say. All the access and inspections that we were carrying out allowed us to determine that there's no credible information that would lead us to believe that they were developing a nuclear weapon. So this, I think, has to be said very clearly, as well as the rest. A number of, a huge amount of near weapon grade enrichment, and of course, these technological capabilities that were there, which were a source of legitimate concern by the international community.
Sebastian joins us now on Zoom to provide some context of the current state of affairs in Iran. Sebastian, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sebastian. So you've done massive amounts of reporting over in Iran. I wonder what you've learned that might pass some light on what's happening over there now in terms of their nuclear capabilities or in terms of what's happening there now.
Yeah, it's really difficult in Iran to be doing original, authentic reporting. It's very challenging for journalists. It has been for a while. This was the I think the 4th or 5th trip that I've done along with my directing partner, Adam Desiderio. We've actually been reporting on Iran for years before this, but we did get access for a couple of weeks, just a few months after the last go-around with these strikes in this past summer. Operation Midnight Hammer, it was called, when the U.S. went in with very high explosive weapons to try to penetrate those underground bunkers at Natanz and Fordo. They also hit Esfahan. So we were on the ground trying to investigate the impact, how much that had set the program back. That's really the big question here, right? Like going in, doing an operation like that, did it achieve its goals? The administration at the time was categoric that it did. This was when President Trump was saying statements like, it was totally and completely obliterated. Like that was what we were being told. We went to try and investigate further. As I said, you're followed at all times by government minders. It's very hard to get access to the places you want to go. We didn't get inside Fordo or Natanz. We teamed up with the Washington Post visual forensics team and Bellingcat and Evident Media to be analyzing the scene from the satellite images as well. So we did some really interesting deep reporting around what you can see from satellite. But on the ground, we were able to go and film at sites, for example, where nuclear scientists had been assassinated. We got a real kind of a unique view of that kind of dynamic of the story. And it was, it left us with a lot of questions still, and everyone still has those questions. But it was remarkable to be in the country at that time and seeing some of that damage up close.
You've not then and before, you've spoken to real people in Iran, like I'm sure every other country is not a monolith. I mean, we spend much more time talking about the theocrats than we do real people in the street. We talk to reporters like you who've come back from rare visits to Tehran and talk about young people admiring the West and Western fashion and those sort of things. So when you hear, actually, let me play something from your film before I ask the question. Here you are speaking with people living there about the U.S. after the U.S.-Israeli strike on the nuclear facilities. Here it is.
So how are people feeling now? Are you expecting or worried about more conflict that's coming?
Yeah, of course, because they say it's not ending, and every day it's passing. Trump say one thing, Netanyahu say another, and every night that we want to go to sleep, we don't know if tomorrow we wake up or not.
So I don't know if those experiences give you some ability to answer the ultimate question. Trump on that Saturday night video, as you know, Sebastian, said, and I'm paraphrasing, we'll do our work and then you rise up and take over your government. It's all yours. Do you see that capacity, that human infrastructure to do what Trump, and I assume a lot of people in the world, Trump fans or not, would like to see happen?
Yeah, it's a good question, Jim. I mean, we... in our time there, we had that really moving conversation kind of near the end of the film when really the woman you were just hearing was kind of outlining what they feared was to come, which has actually transpired. So it was, you can talk to people on the ground about the situation. I think people are fairly careful to criticize the government when there's a government minder right there. Yeah. So it's really not a fully authentic conversation, but we certainly heard a lot of, fear about the future given these strikes. I mean, those strikes this past June were unprecedented. Iran being hit. I mean, downtown Tehran was hit by heavy explosives. So that was certainly something that people were afraid about happening again. I mean, in the time since we went, there've obviously been these huge protests that were brutally suppressed by the security forces, and the information was hard to obtain about the scale of that. But there's obviously thousands of people who've been killed by the security forces. Iran's government has acknowledged it was over 3,000 people or around 3,000. So. As to how much capacity there is for people to organize and mobilize to actually rise up and overthrow the government, as we've heard from different U.S. officials being potentially one of the hopes. I mean, we were on the ground in Iran, I remember a few years back, when there were some protests around economic sanctions, the economic conditions that were happening at the time. And we saw how quickly the security forces were able to control the situation. We were very quickly kind of removed as well from the scene. We got detained at that time for filming in the bazaar, when the bazaar was closed down for the first time in many years. But you really kind of understood how the security forces, they are prepared for these kinds of events. They are organized. It's difficult for people to kind of gather in a particular place in the city without, being kind of controlled by, the different units of the IRGC and the Basij forces. It's interesting to see that what the U.S. has been targeting in these strikes as a result of the protests. Something we've heard from President Trump is that some of the strikes have been aimed at those institutions that were involved in the crackdown. That's been something U.S. officials have talked about. And we've seen just today, the president's speaking right now. He's saying that there's been more than 1,700 strikes so far across the country. And some of them, we're looking into that right now for an update to the film that we put out in December. We're going to be looking again at what's happened now, and investigating just what the kind of strategic kind of priorities have been for which places are targeted. But it's a very, the security forces are incredibly well organized and prepared for moments like this. This has been a facet of the regime, for many years. So it's hard. It's hard to imagine how that could happen in some way, but that does seem to be a goal that the administration is hoping to achieve.
We're talking to Sebastian Walker, as we said before, reported extensively the Middle East, and put together this great, with help from the Washington Post, Frontline documentary, Strike on Iran, the Nuclear Question. So, okay, after all that, this is going to sound like an incredibly naive question from an American who really knows nothing about the culture there. That's me. But I was struck by several things in the original Frontline documentary that you did, by the martyrdom kind of deal, the physicists that were murdered because they were working on the nukes and allegedly, and their pictures and their families, they're on these big walls. An attitude about death, and this, we know 80% of the people there don't like the regime, and maybe those people that have that kind of attitude about death is different. But I was struck by that it's a little bit analogous to Ukraine in the sense of, this is the Iranians' country, that's the Ukrainians' country. The incredible bravery and willingness to sacrifice yourself for your country that we've seen there. Obviously, with those protesters on the street, we've seen it in Iran too. So I'm maybe being too Pollyanna, it's too difficult, but I don't know. They seemed, the resilience. The guy that you interviewed, whose daughter and grandson and son-in-law were all killed in this apartment building.
The microbiologist.
Yes, where they were aiming at the physicist. Yeah. I most people couldn't even talk after something like that. But anyway, you see what I'm getting at here.
Totally. It's pretty eye-opening. The interviews that we did with family members and neighbors who had been, close to scenes of destruction. The strikes in June were extensive. They were hitting apartment buildings in Tehran. There was a lot of damage. There was people weren't really aware, some of them, that there were nuclear scientists living in their building. It was kind of a shock to a lot of people. And that's something that was different about this recent trip that we took. Like, those strikes had really impacted people, I think, in a different way. This was this was a shock, I think, to understand that Iran's missile defenses were really exposed at that point as being able to be circumvented by Israel and the United States. They were kind of shown to be very vulnerable, the government. And I think that's also something that we felt on the ground. It seemed like there was, a kind of growing skepticism that the government was even able to kind of control the security situation from these kinds of attacks. So that was new, honestly. That was something that we felt, speaking to senior officials there as well. We spoke to Ali Larijani, who is now, one of the leaders who is being talked about as potentially the power broker for the immediate future in Iran. And we managed to interview him at the Supreme National Security Council, which has actually been targeted in these recent strikes. But I think, the fact that Israel and the United States had been able to hit Iran so extensively and kind of circumvent the missile defense systems really was a surprise to a lot of Iranians as well.
Why do you think they let you in to begin with? Why'd they allow you there?
It's always hard to get access, but there is you request, and they do allow foreign journalists to come from time to time. The US networks have been there. They want to get their message out as well. I think it's something that's valuable for them in some way. Like they, at the end of the day, sitting down with a top Iranian official in person, asking direct questions, certainly from our side, there's tremendous value to that.
Oh.
That's probably the most valuable thing about going, is the opportunity to kind of ask tough questions in person to somebody who is, that dynamic is what you need, right? And I think on the Iranian side, they do, they see a value in getting their perspective across as well. So while it's hard to get access, they do allow foreign journalists in from time to time, but it's unlike anywhere I've reported from before, honestly. Like the amount of control, the amount of monitoring, the lack of movement and access to do the things that you need to do as a journalist. It's a very unique place to operate as a journalist.
Of course, they do seem to have a party line, from what I gathered from your film, which is when asked about if the obliteration in June had taken. I think one of the big government guys said, no, there were no setbacks, and we're not building bombs, and we're not going to have nuclear bombs. So it was a little, their truthfulness was, I didn't really believe them. That's what they just say, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a fine dance, isn't it? That these officials needed to make. They obviously didn't want to convey the extent of the damage. At the same time, I asked Larijani directly, is Iran pursuing a nuclear weapon? And they are constantly insisting that is not one of the aims that they have with their nuclear program. But at the same time, they have this very, he had a very defiant attitude around, the program itself. You can never destroy the program, was something that he told me. He was, adamant that Iran will not surrender in this regard. And there's a kind of tension there between the message that they're trying to convey about the nuclear program that I think gets to the very heart of this story, honestly.
Sebastian, you said the missile defense system was not what people thought it might be, but Iran has managed to retaliate quite significantly in these last couple of days. Do you have any sense of what their capabilities are at this juncture?
It's hard to determine that on the ground. So we didn't really see, much that kind of can give reporting on that. Obviously, we're seeing the consequences of these strikes. Iran is retaliating. They're able to hit targets around the region. They're obviously, causing damage in surrounding countries. We got access at one point, and it's in the film, to one of the missile exhibitions that they have in Tehran, where they I mean, it's a crazy scene. Like, you see the ballistic weapons that they've developed, the drones, the Shahed drones that they've developed as well. They're all kind of on display proudly to show that Iran does have the capacity to strike back, and it's something that they've obviously put a lot of resources into, and we're seeing that capacity play out now. So it's it's really quite an alarming escalation, and it's really not kind of clear where this is going to end.
Sebastian, we really appreciate your time and your work.
And congratulations on the Frontline piece. It was really something, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Sebastian Walker is director, producer, and correspondent for Frontline's Strike on Iran, the Nuclear Question, which is available at pbs.org/frontline, and it's certainly relevant for what is now going on. Thanks again, Sebastian, for taking the time. Coming up after this quick break, the United States
Before
and
you
Iran.
go ahead, can I just give you an update? After we just had this discussion with Lee Pelton, before we spoke to Sebastian Walker, we were talking to Lee about how the Trump administration had abandoned its fight against law firms that were standing up for principle. They were dropping their appeal, and now the Times is reporting, in an apparent reversal, Trump administration continues the fight against law firms. Administration told a court that it was abandoning its defense. That was yesterday, so we don't know where it stands, but that's the latest.
Okay. Coming up after a quick break, the United States and Iran are at war just months before the World Cup. Will Iran's soccer team get to play? What other ways is a broader Middle East war impacting athletes? We'll talk with NBC Sports' Trenni Casey about that next. I'm Marjorie Regan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/CBS, PBS. No, GBH News. Whoops. Sorry.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, we explore the modern culinary marvel that is Spam, that mysterious hunk of sort of ham turned global phenomenon, with help from a Boston cook featured on the brand new season of Top Chef. Plus, we dive to the deepest depths of Wikipedia with the woman behind a wildly popular Instagram page of the same name. That's the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz. Their signature double clam chowder is available for purchase at all Market Basket locations. More at rogersfishcompany.com.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Regan, Jim Browder. We're streaming at youtube.com/CBS News. No, we're not CBS News. PBS, no, we're not PBS News. We are GBH News. Marjorie's not listening. I'm making fun of her. Streaming at youtube.com, as I say, /GBH News. We're not at the library. We'll return to the library next Tuesday, a little late, Marjorie. On March 10th, the mayor will join us from 12 to 1 on the 10th in person at the library. The governor will join us at the library in person March 27th. Joined on Zoom by Trenni Casey, just back from her wonderful Olympic work, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hey there, Trenni.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Great.
I just want to point out that I was reading the very important texts that we had gotten during the previous segment.
I think
Jim.
you should be. Exactly.
That's what I was doing. Anyway, Trenni, I didn't know about Iran's World Cup. Their team is, because of this crisis now, they're going to be able to play. Tell us what's happening.
Yeah, so I think it's in question for a couple of different reasons, Marjorie. One being, do you treat Iran, even though I guess we're the aggressors here? I don't know how you would say it, but from what I'm understanding, are they treated like Russian athletes, where you ban them from sports competition in the same way because they've sort of engaged you in something? And the other thing I think is just safety's sake. Is it safe for them places, or do they have to stay in country? Like, I think there's a lot of questions about whether or not, and it's really disappointing because Iran right now is the number 2 seed in their bracket. They're good. They've made, I think, 7 of the 8 last World Cups, men's World Cups. They're not just like a gimme, like an easy team. They're a legitimate soccer team that has a chance of making some noise. So listen, obviously soccer is not the most important thing in the world right now, but athletes who train their whole lives for these opportunities, World Cups, much like the Olympics, are a quad. So they're once, they're once every 2 years. Now I'm forgetting. They're not once every 4.
Olympics every 4 years.
They are once every 4. I know the Olympics are once every 4, but now I'm trying to remember if the World Cup is once every 4.
I'm pretty sure it's every 4 too.
Yeah, it's every 4 also. So once every 4 years. So they also now, that's something you train for 4 years as a national team. So it's unfortunate because obviously it's not their fault. It's not athletes' fault, right? When things like this happen, but a lot of times they're the ones who suffer some consequences.
Well, as you said, it's not the most important thing, but we thought it was worth talking about, and I'm sure you do too, because some of the spillover of wars and politics and general. I mean, you add this to the fact, and I don't know what's going on with this, the travel bans. 4 countries on Trump's travel ban list are part of the 48 team competition: Senegal, Ivory Coast, Iran, we just talked about, and Haiti. There's a pause on visa processing that affects 75 countries, including major World Cup countries like Brazil, Colombia, Egypt, that sort of thing. So is there concern surrounding, I mean, we know there are local issues like the Foxborough select people want their money, but beyond that, more, and I'm not criticizing them at all, by the way, they want to know that they have their money. Is a combination of war and just everyday Trumpian politics likely to have a dramatic impact on this competition?
Yeah, on the World Cup, and let's not forget, Los Angeles is host to the 2028 Summer Olympics. That's months before the election. So Trump and his policies will still be ostensibly in charge. Maybe not, God willing. Well, impeachment. I just keep hoping for a good impeachment.
We'll pass that on,
But it does affect it affects these athletes. Whether it's a travel ban, whether or not it's a boycott, right? Like, how do some countries sometimes express their displeasure? Jim, you'll have to remind me. I know that there have been
Jimmy Carter, 1980.
I thought it was 1980.
Yeah.
And that's
Notice she references the oldest person in the room to try to answer the question,
well,
I came through, so it's fine.
I knew I was too little. I was like too little. I know I was alive, but I was too little to remember. And I think this is when the Summer and the Winter Olympics were always held in the same year before they staggered them.
Yeah.
Because the 1980 Winter Olympics, obviously in Lake Placid, went off without a hitch. But it was the 1980 Olympics, and I don't remember where the Summer Olympics were that year.
Do you remember that, Jim?
They might have been in Russia. I'm not sure. We'll check it out. Actually,
but they were boycotted. So there's that. There's also, guys, if you are the reason cities like Los Angeles or Foxborough/Boston, New York City, Seattle. The reason all of these cities want in on these big events is that they are money makers. They're not just about the athletes who are playing, right? So that's an issue in and of itself. Will an athlete be barred? Will his or her visa not be approved to come here? Will they face extra scrutiny once they get into the country? And does that become prohibitive, that they don't want to have to go through all these extra measures just to get in the country because they're singled out just from where they're from and who they play for? But it's like, when you say yes to one of these events, you're saying yes, theoretically, to a boatload of tourism dollars. And if your tourists are banned, or if somebody from Europe, or there are do people who want to see World Cup games say, you know what, United States, screw you, I'm going to Canada? Because Canada's hosting games as well, and so is Mexico. So do you just say, forget it? I'm not going to go to one of these cities. I'm not going to put myself at risk of being detained at the airport or, being possibly the threat of violence because of how I look, or there are going to be protests and what is going on. And it's an unstable country right now. And so, you know what? I'll just go take my tourism dollars and I'll go watch World Cup soccer in Canada. I can't afford to get into a World Cup final anyway, which is being held in New York City. So why do I care if I see a World Cup final? I'll go see whatever round games are happening in a country that I feel welcome in. And that's money lost. Like, there is a major economic trickle down here when you discriminate against people simply from where they're from.
Trenni Casey. Trenni Casey. Thank you so much.
Well said. Well said.
You were great at the Olympics, by the way, as always. You're terrific. Thanks.
We've been speaking with Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston. We much appreciate her time on this one. Thanks, Trenni. Coming up after this quick break, the Somerville YMCA has been trying to expand for years, but a local homeowners refuse to give up their house. So the Y is forced to build around them. They've been there for more than 40 years. We're going to open lines to get your thoughts on being forced to move from your home and standing your grounds against the odds. Would you? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, as the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran continues, European leaders have been reacting with caution. Another Massachusetts town has chosen not to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. And a Republican gubernatorial candidate is naming their running mate. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where graduate students can build vital business skills through experience. Business Bootcamp Series, April 13th through 17th. northeastern.edu/business bootcamp. And Beacon Circle patrons Lynn Bay Dayton and Bruce Dayton, proud to support GBH 89.7 and the commitment to local, national, and global journalism that inspires, engages, and supports diversity in the community.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We thought we'd bring you back locally to end the show with a pretty interesting story. The story of one family in Somerville refusing to accept a buyout and leave their home so the YMCA can expand, I think, fourfold, actually. They do want to replace their current ancient facility with a place that is much bigger, with a ton of affordable housing units promised. But this one family, more than $1 million over the assessed value of the home. So the lines are open. We don't know who you're rooting for at 877-301-8970 to call or text. This is more difficult than the typical Am I the A-hole, for example, which is Thursday, because both parties
Look at
are
that
sort
house.
of
See
the
the
good
little
guys.
house?
I know. Did we put that up?
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, that's
There it
a
is.
rendering from the Boston
drawing.
Globe.
It's going to be surrounded.
So the family has the right to stay in their home. The couple that lives there in their 70s and 80s, they immigrated to this country, found their corner slice of the American dream in Somerville, right there, as Marjorie said.
Mm-hmm.
But the Y is aiming to provide a better community service for more people, promises affordable housing. In fact, according to them in the Globe story, the number of affordable units would be nearly double if the Y is able to take this little slice where the house is. But do the needs of the many outweigh the hopes and dreams of the few? What do you make of this situation? This family refuses to be bought out, but some families, like a parallel story in the Cape, have no choice because of eminent domain, where the state comes in and demolishes your home for the public interest. Families on the Cape Cod Canal are going through this right now, with more than a dozen homes slated for demolition to renovate the Sagamore Bridge. But again, that's a public kind of thing. So 877-301-8970. A couple of questions. Who you're rooting for? The homeowner that's standing up against a major institution, but surely not a bad guy, the Y. And would you move if you were in a similar circumstance? You'd lived there for a long time, and there was an emotional connection to your property, and it appears as of the moment they have an absolute right to stay there should they choose. I should have, well, the thing I left out of the story, as of the moment, even though it's really not the final chapter, the Wise decided to build around them.
That's right.
Around them.
Around them, as that picture just shows.
Yeah.
You know, I saw this story in the Globe, and something just really resonated with me. The family that owns this house, they came here back in the 80s from Greece. They're now in their 70s and 80s, raised 4 kids in the home. They took very careful care of the home. They planted Delilahs and hibiscus and peonies and this lush garden there, put a little decorative stone fence around it. As the daughter says, you know, at this stage of their lives, in their 70s and 80s, they just didn't want to deal with this. They didn't want, even though they're going to deal with 2.5 years of probably really crushing, loud construction, and they're going to be surrounded by this massive...
They're 70s and 80s already, by the way.
They're in their 70s and 80s already, that's right. So they just said, no, they're not moving, even though they could have made a lot of money by moving someplace else. And of course, I was reminded of the great movie Up. Remember this movie?
Sure.
Pixar's 2009 animated film. This centers around Mr. Fredrickson, voiced by the late, great Ed Asner, and his unwillingness to sell the house he bought with his deceased wife decades earlier. Here's the sound.
Tell your boss over there that you boys are ruining our house.
Well, just to let you know, Mike wants to be happy to take this whole place off your hands and for double his last offer. What do you say to that?
I believe I made my position to your boss quite clear. Here, let me talk to him.
You in the soup. Yes, you. Take a bath, hippie.
Our number's 877-301-8970. I have to say, I have a feeling I'm in a different place. We didn't ask where you are.
Yeah.
I don't get this family thing. I understand the emotional connection. As you just said, despite that connection, they have 2.5 years of construction, which is going to be intense. You're going to want to be there during the day? I don't think so. Secondly, if you look at that rendering, there's going to be virtually no light. Look at it, at least part of the day. You have this 4-story, large, much-needed community structure. What do you have left except the physical building you're in? I would say take the best offer, maybe tell some the why you want another $500,000 or whatever it is. But I sort of have sympathy for the homeowners, but only so much. The most important thing, you're Miss Affordable Housing. You talk about it all the time.
I know. Well, this is
the Globe says this: 60 units if the house stays, 80 to 120 if the house goes. They're not going to be unhoused, to use the term of the moment. They just move somewhere else with $2.5 million.
Something terrible about people getting pushed out of the house they've been in for 40 years.
For a huge common good. This is not...
Well, it is a huge...
No, this is not some voracious,
it's not some
horrible...
voracious thing. No, it's people... I mean, we had this in Boston, the famous West End situation.
A while ago, yeah.
That was a while ago. But as Jamie pointed out to me, I've driven by this building a million times. It's like a 42 Lamancy Way, this brick building that's all that remains of the West End. This one little building that's about like 6 feet from the when you come down 93 South, get off Star Drive, get off the Lever Connector. It's right there with billboards on it, but that's the only one left. They wiped out a whole neighborhood, and they're wiping out a whole neighborhood down the Cape too. For
what would you suggest they do? You want a new bridge? I feel bad for them too.
Every time I go over the bridge, I think it's going to collapse.
Well, they say, again, I have sympathy for them. One family just moved there. What's that?
Here's Maureen in Plymouth. She's with you, Jim. She said, oh my God, $1 million. Call the moving van. Right. I'm out of there.
$1 million over assessed value.
Maybe I feel better if they could put the house. They did this a house in Brookline, like right across the street.
Move the house.
Move the house. They made some mistake. They moved this huge brick house like 50 feet to the right. Then they put it back after they built a garage. Then they must have made a mistake because they had to move it again. They had to move this thing twice. I would have felt better if they put this house on the big thing and then drove it down Mass Ave to another locale or something for these people.
Every time, you are such a, I want to be kind here.
What?
You are such a, whatever. Every time the mayor or the governor are on our show and they talk about affordable housing, here's Marjorie. Well, how many are built? How many are already permanent?
No, listen, I'm being inconsistent here.
This is real.
No one is on my side.
This is real affordable.
What's that? They must be hoarders. Get over yourselves. Take the money you'll need for when you eventually have to leave your house and enter a care facility. Okay.
Here's from Chris from Billerica. I might move if they were offering me enough money. That said, being in their 70s and 80s, I get it. As a fellow Greek American, I can relate to their stubbornness.
That's right.
I get it too.
They tried to go over the people from the Y tried to go over some Greek pastries to try to smooth things over, but it didn't work.
You know what the family said? Pooh on your pastries. No, they didn't. They haven't spoken. They said it was very gracious. Thank you very much.
So Mary from Waltham, is it Waltham? What do you think, Mary?
Yeah. Hi, Mary.
Yes, I'm from Waltham. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Pleasure.
I remember a similar situation back in the late 60s, or maybe it was the early 70s, when Trump was trying to build his casinos in Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an elderly woman who refused to sell her house.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I had heard about Trump, and I started paying attention when I was very young, which is ironic because now I'm a senior working with seniors. But anyhow, so she would not sell her house. So he planned on building all of his casino around her house to obstruct her view of the ocean. And then I can't remember exactly how he ended up getting it. He may have taken it by eminent domain. I remember thinking at the time, well, everybody has a price. Maybe he's not offering her enough money. It doesn't sound like that's the situation now, though. But anyhow, he ended up forcing her out.
I bet he did.
And yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't remember, but they're not old as I am, so they don't know that story.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so I'm thinking that maybe there has to be a way to convince this couple, maybe to offer them a relocation and something that is comparable or even better, plus some money.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Speaking of relocation, Mary, listen to this anonymous texter. $1 million, you'll find me on the Amalfi Coast. Sure beats Somerville.
Yeah, but
Mary,
really,
thanks for a great call.
How much can you get for $1 million in Somerville anymore? Not.
It's not $1 million. $1 million over assessed value.
That's right.
It's $2.5 million.
Well, how do you know how much they have on their mortgage?
Well, what do you mean?
Maybe they had to take out a lot of home equity loans.
They've been there for decades.
They could have taken out a lot of home equity loans. A lot
Marjorie
of us
is squirming here because she knows she's being inconsistent, to use her word.
Okay, Jim, maybe the homeowner's purpose in life is like yours, to be as annoying as possible to as many people as possible.
Well, maybe it is. And I've succeeded. I'm not sure they will succeed.
877-301-8970. I just feel, I don't know why, I feel I'm with this family. Andrea from Raynham. What do you think, Andrea?
Hello, Andrea.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thank you.
I love your show. I just wanted to let you know about before the eminent domain law, there was no 495. And this man was in a position where, all of his neighbors sold their land and they relocated and he didn't. And he litigated it. And there was, it was before the law was enacted, so there was nothing that they could do. But the end result was this man had his house, yes, but it was surrounded by 495 North, 495 South.
Exactly. This is a variation on that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for older people, the YMCA generates a lot of foot traffic and a lot of car traffic.
Yeah.
People going and dropping off their kids and daycare and you know how it goes. So, for $2.5 million, I might, think again.
Okay. Well,
by the way,
everyone seems to say that. Listen to this.
Andrea, thanks for your call.
Listen to this texture. If my parents were offered $1 million over their home value, I would drive the bulldozer. People aren't on my side on this one. But the Y is kind of a mess over there. I didn't realize it was such a mess.
What do you mean a mess?
Apparently it's built in 1904.
Yeah, it's an old building.
Old. They have all these old fireplaces all over the place. The swimming pool is so tiny that this YMCA swim team has to practice at an elementary school a mile away. So I guess it's a real mess over there.
Well, everybody needs 4 times as large. They're going to expand dramatically their affordable housing.
Yep.
And the housing units they have now are studio apartments that say aren't that great. Jamie, our colleague, says for $2.5 million, they can take my spouse too.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Duneen.
That's a
Oh,
good one.
from Somerville, the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Hello, Duneen.
Hi there. I am in favor of this family keeping their house.
All right.
And we desperately need more affordable housing. We don't need any more luxury condos.
Yeah.
But these people have been there forever. And their garden and their yard is beautiful. I walk by it every week. And they shovel their sidewalk, which is a big plus. But, you know, the Y is going to build around them, and it's clear that it's going to be miserable for a couple of years. But they're making their choice, and I'm supportive of them.
Well, you know, it's not going to be just miserable for a couple of years only during construction. It's going to be miserable forever because, again, if you look at that rendering, Duneen, and I respect your opinion, this is this massive, I don't mean this in a critical way, this massive structure next to this modest-sized house next door. I mean, you look out the window, and you're going to see a massive brick wall, right?
Yep. I mean, clearly they know what they're doing. They know what they're up against. They know what they're going to be looking at. But it's an emotional connection.
It's an emotional connection. Absolutely.
You're a better person than I.
Yeah,
Duneen,
Denise,
thanks
thank you for the
We
call.
really appreciate it.
Now, many people are speculating that there's bodies buried in the yard, and that's what's really going on.
We don't know that.
Here.
It could be, but you don't know that for sure. No.
Maybe there were some murders back in the 1920s or something like that.
Before this family, we should be
Before
clear.
this family, they didn't come to the 1980s.
No.
Well, that's what they think. That's why they think the
like a Whitey Bulger thing?
The tenement that's the only one that's left, that's right next to the highway now, with the billboards by the Lever Connector. There's some connection, they think, with the mob because the rent there went to Gennaro Angiulo, who was one of the head of the mob in Boston. They thought that was one of the reasons it survived. But other people say that's not true at all. But I thought that added a little bit of mafioso glamour to the whole story. In '72, Skinny Kazankas, he was a low-level mafia associate, bought the buildings at 42 Lamanso Street and 23 Bellrica, but the tax bills went to Boston underboss, Jerry Angiulo.
Do you know that my mother, I've never told you this, almost named me Skinny Garzanos? Did you know? She was... I can't believe I never told you that. Talk about coincidences. Skinny Garzanos Prouty. She was thinking of name. Garzanos would have been my middle name, obviously.
Yeah.
So... But she decided against
Gonzalez. Yeah, those mob guys
Browdy.
always have great
Skinny
names, don't they?
Browdy, yeah.
I love it. Okay, let's go to Chris in Cohasset.
Hello
Hi,
there,
Chris.
Chris. Welcome.
Hey there, you guys.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good.
So I sympathize with these guys. I really do. But, you know, I don't know a single person that owns property. I don't think I'll ever own property. I would love to take a couple $1 million and buy something else. And I mean, is the house going to be left to their children?
We don't know. We don't have those details.
It's actually a good question. That's a good question. Yeah. Good.
If that was the case, then maybe I could understand it. But I don't know. It seems like wouldn't a couple $1 million be better in your kids' and grandkids' pocket? Because I mean, I don't know how long it takes to spend couple $1 million, but I don't know how long they'll have.
Well, you know, you make decent arguments too. And by the way, the daughter, I think, is the daughter the person who's actually spoken to the Globe.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris, for your call. And what did she have to say?
She said, at this stage in their lives, the stability of the sunlight, some of which they're going to lose, the privacy, which they're going to lose, and peace, which they're probably going to lose.
Other than that, it's okay.
They are more important than ever. Their preference remains to continue living in the home they have cared for and cherished for more than 4 decades. And they they're elderly. They're in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
So maybe they figure...
don't say this. I know what you're going to say. Don't know. They could live a long life.
They're going to wait till they need assisted living, which nobody can afford. So if they get even more money down the road for the house, then maybe they can afford the assisted living.
You know, we're portraying the family in the most loving way, and maybe they are, but it's also possible they're really smart negotiators, unlike the negotiator in chief. Maybe they're just waiting to the appropriate time to see if they can get another few $100,000 and go to an even nicer
maybe
place.
For $4 million, they'll reconsider.
They might. They really. By the way, everybody is taking this deal. Jamie's willing to give up his spouse. An anonymous texter, by the way, his spouse has just changed the locks on the door.
Change the locks on the door.
$2.5 million. I'll be going by midnight and even throw selling me appliances.
Yeah, somebody else volunteers to go down with a sledgehammer and start the demolition all by himself. Mark from Cambridge, what do you think, Mark?
Hello, Mark.
Hi. What this is reminding me of is a story that happened, it's probably 60 years ago when I was a teenager in New York, and this is in Queens. Macy's was building this huge department store. It was round, and they had started construction. They were maybe halfway or more through construction when they realized that there was this one private home that the building didn't hit, but the backyard, the building would have gone through the backyard. So they went to this old lady who had a dog, and the dog needed the backyard, and they offered her a bunch of money, and she said no. And then they offered her a bunch more, and she said no. And then it hit the newspapers, and they offered her more. But she said, no, my dog needs the backyard, and I don't want to move, and that's that. And they eventually built the thing, and there was a little notch in the building. They built this huge building. It was a couple blocks square with a little notch in the side of it, and you would drive by and you would see that notch, and everyone was just enormously proud of that woman. She was a hero to all of us.
There you go. What was the notch? Was that for the dog to come out the door?
No, the notch was the house.
Oh, the notch was the house.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't get it, Mark.
Mark, that was great. But, the difference is standing up to Macy's is one thing. Standing up to the Y is, would you not agree, sort of two different kind of things? It's a great,
I was in my car, and I hadn't heard the beginning of the story.
Yeah, why, yeah.
So the why, I didn't know any of that. It just reminded me of this lady who stood up to Macy's.
No, that's great.
Made them build a notch into their building.
I love it. And by the way, years ago when I lived in New York City, which was well after that, I remember seeing a photo of that in the New York Post, which was great. I'm with you, Mark. Thanks very much for the call. But this is a really good cause. It's not like an enemy of the people kind of, a high-rise, $8 million unit.
It's a 50-50 thing.
No, it's not. It's not. The public good has got to carry the day here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
okay.
really...
We'll see how the public good does if they come to your house, Jim.
Well... I mean, for the right, there's a price for. Is there not a price for everything? I hate to be crass. There's a price for everything, right?
I think for some people, Jim, there is not.
Is there a price for you? Is there a price for you?
Absolutely, there's a price for me.
So there is for me. There is for you. That's 2 out of.
But you have to have enough money so you could actually afford to buy something else in Somerville or Cambridge, which you probably can't. It's you'd have to get tons of money to do that. Edgar B. Hurt III is in the studio.
Do you know what we're talking about?
I do. Well, I'm
Can we turn on the mic here? Thanks.
Yeah, I can hear what you're talking about.
Okay, there he is. So would you sell that?
Hi.
What do you think should happen here?
So I'm looking at this through the lens of the Curiosity Desk. And the thing is, I'm imagining 20, 30, 50 years hence, we need those people who do something like this. They don't sell and a whole building gets built around them. So 50 years later, somebody who's running the Curiosity Desk can do a story about,
that's right.
Why is there a YMCA built all around this house in Somerville?
That's right.
And
a
your
lone voice
successor
in the
can
wilderness.
have people on. There'll be 120 then, so it'll be perfect.
It's going to be great. Yeah. So,
terrific.
for future content, this is a great story for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you doing on the show today?
Well, so Jim, I know you are a fan of, I don't know if it's called meat. I know you're a fan of food out of tubes, generally speaking. How do you feel about food in a can, specifically Spam?
I have tried. We, through the years, have occasionally done
So you're
Spam.
you're a yes on Spam.
I've tried it.
Marjorie.
It's a national, not national, the state food of Hawaii.
Indeed.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's huge in Hawaii.
And I've tried it, and every time we talk about it through the years, which we haven't in years, so I'm anxious to hear what you have to say there. I've fried it. I've done it with eggs. It
doesn't do it for you.
Doesn't do it for you.
What's the issue, do you think, for you?
It's you know what's, you're Pennsylvania, Scrapple. It's Scrapple-esque, and I never really got into Scrapple.
Yeah.
Did you ever eat Scrapple?
No, that
You've
makes
never had
it sound
Scrapple?
even grosser. Scrapple-esque.
Scrapple, come on in.
Spam and Scrapple. Let's whip that up for dinner, sweetheart.
Now, the only appealing thing to me is that it comes in a can. That
does feel like it is right up your alley. Anyway, we've got Irene Li and Laurence Louie from Rubato, and they're going to talk about Spam. We're going to have
Quincy.
Yes.
Fabulous. Irene Li, fabulous.
She is fabulous.
Yes,
she
indeed.
is fabulous.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Is she into Spam and Scrapple as well?
Indeed. Well, I don't know about Scrapple. We'll ask her about Scrapple, but she's pro-Spam.
You will,
She's pro-Spam. Okay. Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Check out our terrific TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we are not at the Boston Public Library. Live on the air, though, we'll speak with Harvard National Security expert Juliet Kayan, the ACLU's Carol Rose, and Brockton School Superintendent, that is, Priya Tahil-E-Ani.
That's not close, but let me tell you, she also, if you know the name, despite the pronunciation, before taking over Brockton, which I think has the highest
Dahlia,
she was in Everett and got into it with Mayor
She's someone we really want to
It's a
talk
really
to,
good
and I
story.
apologize for botching the last name. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Laws, additional support from Ronan Keenan, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Ran, our YouTube streamer. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. Edgar and the Curiosity Desk are next, right after we are done. The Culture Show with Jared Bowen starts at 2. They're going to speak with former astronaut Katie Coleman about her book, Sharing Space, An Astronaut's Guide to Mission, Wonder, and Making Change. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Yeah, I want to clarify. I only have a few seconds left. When Marjorie said we're CBS or PBS News, we're not. If people are confused, we'd like to be some days,
we're NBC.
but not today.
Are we NBC?
Maybe we are.
ABC.
I'm Jim Browdy. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of outdoor furniture delivered throughout New England, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. Spring events in progress. Seasons4.com. And Brightbound. It's never too early to start thinking about what comes next, and Brightbound helps students from middle school through high school discover rewarding careers. Learn more at BRITEbound.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, it's a single number picked by the government that in turn decides the fate of trillions of dollars for Americans most in need. But how does the poverty line get set? The head of MIT Economics thinks there might be a better way. Then she's built a fan base in the millions on Instagram, scouring the offbeat, surprising, and simple charms hidden in the vast reaches of Wikipedia. We meet the woman behind Depths of Wikipedia. And we reevaluate how we consider spam as a cultural and culinary force, as well as the muse for what some say is the single greatest commercial jingle of all time.
You don't say ham, you say spam. Spam is real spice. Ham, you don't say ham, you say spam.
Heck yeah, it's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. American citizens are being advised to avoid the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia's capital after the compound came under attack today. The Saudi Foreign Ministry says Iranian drones attacked the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. There were no immediate reports of injuries. The U.S. Embassy in Kuwait was attacked yesterday. Since the Israeli-U.S. war in Iran began Saturday, the Islamic Republic has been targeting U.S. interests in Gulf states that are normally considered safe. Markets have been experiencing a sharp sell-off as oil prices surge. President Trump predicted moments ago that won't last.
If we have a little high oil prices for a little while, but as soon as this ends, those prices are going to drop, I believe, lower than even before.
He said the war could last 4 to 5 weeks or longer. Trump is hosting German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who says Berlin wants to work on a strategy for when the current Iranian government no longer exists. Well, recent polls suggest the majority of Americans disapprove of the Iran war. Outside Washington, some rank-and-file Democrats and Republicans are taking different sides on the war. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is in a competitive congressional district. Here's NPR's Frank Langfitt.
Tom Fink is a Democrat who served on a nearby borough council. The U.S. attack shocked him.
I was horrified. It just reminds me of Iraq and things that have happened before. And you wonder, where is Congress?
Patrick Basim has a different take. He's running for the York County Republican Committee and says he's glad to see President Trump trying to remove any potential nuclear threat.
I think it's a great day for the Iranian people. They should feel liberated.
I feel liberated as an American not having to deal with that thought in my head.
Bassem said he hopes Iranians can overthrow the regime and hold free elections. Frank Langford, NPR News, Harrisburg.
It's election day in a handful of states. These are the first major primary contests for the 2026 midterms, including in North Carolina and Texas. NPR's Stephen Fowler reports on what's at stake.
Texas and North Carolina are large states with diverse populations that will provide an early glimpse of how voters are feeling about the current political landscape. A handful of incumbent lawmakers, like North Carolina Democratic Representative Valerie Foushee, Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn, and others, face serious primary challengers. A number of races could be competitive in the general election and help determine which party controls each chamber of Congress. Primary results and voter turnout in these states will set the stage for a midterm election where affordability and immigration enforcement are key issues. Stephen Fowler, NPR News, Atlanta.
A Georgia jury convicted Colin Gray, the father of a teenager accused of the 2024 Appalachia High School shooting, in which 4 people died and 9 people were wounded. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. One of the busiest streets in Boston reopened to traffic this afternoon after being closed due to a gas leak. Boston police say North Grove Street at the entrance to Mass General Hospital was cordoned off near its intersection with Cambridge Street. That area is directly in front of the main entrance to Mass General, and folks had been advised to avoid the area. Officials have not disclosed what the origin of the gas leak was or what caused it. And Holden residents have overwhelmingly rejected a proposal to bring the town into compliance with the MBTA Communities Act. The law requires cities and towns served by the T to zone for multifamily housing. Holden has already been sued by the Mass Attorney General for non-compliance. Town manager Peter Luke says even so, it's been hard to get residents on board.
The people want what the people want, and it was a pretty telling display that Holden residents were strongly against the proposal and seemed to be strongly against this legislation to begin with.
Residents voted on Monday night. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court had already ruled that the MBTA Communities Act is in line with the state's constitution, and the Healey administration can force cities and towns to comply. In sports, the Bruins host the Penguins at the Garden tonight. In the forecast, we are about to get hit with a wintry mix this afternoon, bringing with it snow, sleet, and freezing rain. Maybe an inch or so high in the low to mid-30s, then freezing rain overnight, low about 30 degrees. 35 outside our studios here in Brighton. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Last year in the U.S., about 11.5% of the population lived below the poverty line and received a total of about $1.2 trillion in government assistance. So what defines poverty? For a family of 4 people, it is an annual income of $31,812. But that phrase, the poverty line, well, we use it a lot, and it deserves a little more scrutiny. Who sets the number? How is that number decided? And if that family of 4 earned $32,000 a year, would they really feel not poor? Well, we asked Jon Gruber to join us to help answer some of those questions and more. Jon is the chair of MIT's Department of Economics, where he's also the Ford Professor of Economics. His latest book is Jumpstarting America, How Breakthrough Science Can Revive Economic Growth and the American Dream. Jon, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Edgar, good to be here.
So the poverty line, what is the poverty line?
So the idea of the poverty line is to have a measure of, in the U.S., of what we call absolute deprivation, the standard of living below which individuals cannot meet their basic needs. If you look towards next year's projections, as you said, for a family of 4, that'll raise about $33,000. For an individual, it's about $16,000, and for a family of 2, it's about $22,000. Now, you hear those numbers that it raises, to my mind, two natural questions.
Go on.
First of all, doesn't that mean different things in different parts of the country?
One of my questions.
And second of all, why is it twice as much for a family of 4, but not twice as much for a family of 2?
Also a question. Also a question that comes into my mind. Let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
How did we get the poverty line to begin with? Where did it come from? How was it set?
Great origin story. For those of us who believe in the importance of government, it's a great origin story. In 1964, a mid-level government employee named Molly Orshansky was charged with the exercise of not really making the future of U.S. fiscal policy, but just simply saying, what does absolute deprivation mean in the U.S.? So what'd she do? She said, well, look, for a typical family in the U.S. at that time, food was about a third of their budget.
Okay.
She added up the costs of buying a minimally nutritionally adequate diet. She multiplied it by 3, and she wrote a memo and said, look, this is an estimate of what it would cost to live sufficiently in the U.S. That number became the poverty line and has existed for the past 60 plus years as that number inflated by the CPI. So literally that number she came up with is the poverty line just inflated by inflation over time.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you about that in a question. We have a little sound of Lyndon Johnson, former president, giving a famous 1964 State of the Union address about fighting income inequality.
This administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America. The richest nation on earth can afford to win it. We cannot afford to lose it.
So this comes at the same time, 1964. So this happens in the context of the war on poverty. At the time, Jon, do you feel like that's a fair methodology that she came up with, or could it have been better at the start?
At the time, I think it was a good. Probably wasn't there. I wasn't born, but my guess is she intended it not to be the final word, but more of a guidepost.
Yeah.
And I think it became the final word, and that has caused a number of problems over time in terms of measuring what it really means to be in poverty or to be absolutely poor in the U.S.
We'll get into some of those problems in a second. Another question you raised is why isn't it twice as high for 2 as it is for one person? So let's start there, right? An individual is the poverty line in 2026, $15,960 for a couple. That's 2. So we've gone from 1 to 2, $21,640. So not double. Why?
Look, as I've said a number of times when I've appeared on Boston Milk Radio, Edgar, I'll say it to you for the first time. It won't be the last. Part of what economists do so well is make up fancy-sounding terms for very simple concepts.
Okay.
And our fancy-sounding term here is the equivalence scale.
Yes.
The equivalence scale is simply the idea that there are economies of scale in living together. What does that mean? That means 2 people can live together for less than twice what it costs for one person. Why is that? Well, a 2-bedroom apartment is not twice the cost of a 1-bedroom apartment. It's more, but it's not twice. When you can cook for 2, it's less than twice as expensive as cooking for 1. We have these sort of economies of scale that provide so that basically as the family group expands, costs don't expand one for one. And there's some estimate of those economies of scale. As far as I can tell, those estimates are pretty good. I think that was not a weakness of the formula. And that's what leads to the notion that really 4 people, it costs about twice as much to have a household of 4 people as it does to have a household of 1 person.
And so for you, at least from where you sit, as somebody who is an economist who has fancy words for this stuff, that bit of the equation looks kind of okay to you. That sort of makes sense.
Yes, it does. That's not the problem. The problem is, as you said, when it was set up, whether by design or not, it left a number of important issues off the table.
Like what?
Well, let's first start with the most important one, which is that it left off the table the fact that the bundle of consumption might change over time. While food was 1/3 of people's consumption bundles in 1964, today it's more like 1/6. Why is that? Well, that's because the price of food has gone up much less than the price of other important goods, most notably housing and medical care.
Right.
So as a result, you have a system which has gotten out of whack because it doesn't reflect the fact that the things we spend more money on have gotten expensive more rapidly. So that's a big problem. The second problem massive differences around the country.
And
in the
as we
cost
here
of
in
living.
Massachusetts, we know that, right? I mean, for anybody here who has friends who live in many other parts of the country, it's very clear that it costs more to live here than a lot of other places.
Look, Edgar, no one's rich on $20,000 a year, but you can afford to rent an apartment and buy food in other parts of the country on $20,000 a year. You cannot in Massachusetts or anywhere near the Boston area. So that's the second problem. The third problem is the way it's measured based on what is your cash income. What did WGBH pay you last year?
Right.
It doesn't include the fact that for many poor people, the government provides resources in non-cash forms. Health insurance through Medicaid, public housing, food programs, etc. Those are resources that are provided to you that affect your ability to survive. They're not reflected in this measure. And then finally, it doesn't account for other things you have to pay out to live.
Such as
childcare. If you are going to earn an income by, you're going to have someone help take care of your kids. That's going to cost money. So the poverty line counts the income you earn, but does not subtract what you have to pay to actually earn that income in childcare.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with MIT economist Jon Gruber about the U.S. poverty line. Sorry, I cut you off there, John. Go ahead. You had another thought.
So in 1994, recognize these limitations. The National Academy of Sciences convened an expert panel, including economists and others, to revisit how the poverty line should be made. And they wrote a very influential book arguing the poverty line should be created in a different way.
Okay, and so what was their idea?
That got a lot of attention. Their idea was to adjust it regionally, to adjust the mix of goods so that if the things people consume inflate more, you raise the level, to include all sources of resources, not just cash income, but things like in-kind goods, to account for the cost of earning a living. And they had a different kind of calculation they proposed. It was experts that proposed it. A few years later, I was working in the Clinton administration, and I worked in the Treasury Department. One of the best parts of my job was I had an assistant who was wonderful. And she would tell me, go to this meeting, don't go to that meeting, talk with this person, don't talk to that person. She'd been in government 30 years. She came to me one day, she said, John, something's happened, never happened to me before. You have a meeting today and they won't tell me when it is or where it is or what's about. They're just going to come get you and take you.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, are we at war? Like, what's happened?
Yeah.
So they came and grabbed me. They brought me to this secret, like this high lockdown location deep in the bowels of the White House. And they said, we want to talk about defining the poverty line. And I was like, what the hell?
Didn't see that coming, right?
Didn't see that coming. Why was it? Well, that's because what would happen, Edgar, if we redefine the poverty line the way this group suggested? Well, for example, suddenly people in Mississippi would look a lot richer and people in Massachusetts would look a lot poorer. That would mean billions and hundreds of billions of dollars that have been going to Mississippi because we redistribute money in the government based on poverty would suddenly go to Massachusetts. That's politically dangerous.
Wow.
Suddenly, black families would look better off than white families, would look relatively better off. Why? That's because black families relatively benefit from other aspects of the safety net compared to white families. So we'd be talking about redistributing resources from black families to white families. There was an enormous amount of politically sensitive redistribution that would happen if you actually moved away from this system. And so based on secret meetings like that, it was decided we would not. The Census Bureau did create something called the Supplemental Poverty Index, where they try to track a different measure of poverty, but it's really still not what the National Academy of Sciences recommended. For example, it's sort of it's basically targeted to hit the same poverty level as the official measure. So basically, because of the political challenge of transitioning to a better poverty measure, we're not doing it. And we are still working with Molly Orshansky.
MIT economist Jon Gruber about the U.S. poverty line and the implications of the fact that we have been measuring the poverty line the same way for decades. So you've noted that right now the only thing we do besides what she had put out there is we essentially pin it to inflation. So we do readjust this calculation based on inflation. Is there something else we ought to be doing besides pinning it to inflation, that maybe is not as politically sensitive or impossible as the suggestions that you said were out there on the table that were, decided against?
Yeah, I think there is. And that comes to the important point that what it means to live in a state of absolute deprivation has changed. In 1964, you could be a reasonably successful middle-class person without a car, without health insurance, without a cell phone,
internet access.
Internet access. These are all things that are minimally necessary to live life in America today. You cannot literally live life in America without a cell phone. In many parts of the country, you can't live without a car, without internet access. So the problem is we are not accounting for that cost. So what should we do? Well, what other countries do that make a lot of sense is they say, let's define absolute deprivation as a share of typical income. So in European countries, they say you're poor if your income is below, say, 40% of the typical income in society. That way you say, look, if society generally is getting richer, then that means what it means to be poor should also be changing.
So this is like that. Is this like that average median income? You see that a lot around housing stuff, right? Where it's like, do you qualify for, housing assistance? Well, it depends on a percentage of the AMI in your zip code or whatever.
Exactly. So this is what other countries do to think about redistributing resources. Remember, we sort of skipped over, we went too fast at the beginning. The poverty line is the basis of redistributing $1.2 trillion worth of resources in our society. This is a hugely consequential number. That's why politically it's hard to change. So, for example, if the poverty line was higher in Massachusetts, it should be, even if you're not going to make it lower in Mississippi, that suddenly means, hundreds of thousands of more people might qualify for government spending. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
This is a hugely consequential calculation. It's unfortunate that it's so hard to change politically. And certainly I think the sort of European system of kind of tying it at least to what's a typical income makes a lot more sense.
Is this the way you sort of talk about, when we talk about the poverty line, we're talking about, as you've stated a couple times, this is sort of the level of absolute deprivation. When you start talking about measuring, it sounds like relative to what everybody else is getting, it seems like we're having a conversation a little bit more broadly about income inequality and sort of measuring a percentage as opposed to saying, here's the line below which you cannot survive. Those it's sort of two separate ways of thinking.
Edgar, I think this is a fascinating point, which is in a standard economic model, what we care about is your well-being. So let's take a society where no one's poor. Whatever the poverty line is, no one's poor. Okay? And in that society, let's create a few incredibly rich people. In a standard economic model, that's irrelevant. Great, good for them, they're rich. Maybe they have a talent people want to pay for. Maybe they're LeBron James. Whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
As long as everybody is doing okay. That is not the way a lot of people view society. A lot of people say, no, what matters is income inequality. What matters is how much the poor have relative to the rich. And increasingly, there's some evidence that that may be right. That in fact, what people may care about is not so much what they have, but what they have relative to others. So, for example, if you study people's self-assessed well-being, it turns out as their income goes up, their well-being goes up. As the income of their neighbors goes up, their well-being goes down.
The Jones effect. I need and want what my neighbors have.
Here's the best piece of evidence of the Jones effect. I love this. They did a study where they looked at the neighbors of lottery winners.
Okay.
And the neighbors of lottery winners are more likely to go bankrupt. Because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Really?
The neighbor won the lottery. They now think this is the new standard of living they should aspire to, and they go bankrupt.
That's crazy.
So basically, this comes to a fundamental challenge in economics, Edgar, which is when people don't behave according to our standard model, there's two possibilities. One is our model's right and they're wrong. The other is our model's wrong and they're right. And basically, this is a challenge where it's not clear from a standard model why people should care what their neighbors have, but they do.
Yeah.
And that's clearly a feature of human nature. In such a world, it's not just poverty that matters, it's inequality. And let me also say, very importantly, Edgar, in such a world, it puts a massive premium on redistributive government policies. It's one thing to say we should redistribute to make sure no one lives in a standard they can't survive. It's another thing to say, even if people can survive, we just shouldn't let some people much richer than others. That suggests a much more radically redistributive government policy.
All right. We were speaking with Jon Gruber, Ford Professor of Economics and Chair of MIT's Department of Economics. Jon, thanks so much for sharing your expertise with us once again here on the Curiosity Desk.
You bet. Happy to be here, Edgar.
Stay with us just ahead. Maybe you found yourself going down a rabbit hole on Wikipedia and thought, some of these pages are really weird. Well, our next guest has turned that experience into a joyful comedy romp and brings her show to the Wilbur next week. She's with us for a preview just ahead. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, astronaut Cady Coleman has spent months orbiting Earth, watching the planet from a place few people and even fewer women have ever been. As part of our Women's History Month coverage, she joins us to talk about her journey beyond gravity and her book, Sharing Space, reflecting on exploration, curiosity, and helping to open the hatch for those ready to follow. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz, offering an array of New England seafood and entrees shippable anywhere in the U.S. More at rogersfishcompany.com. And Bonsai Bar, hosting pop-up beginner bonsai workshops at breweries across New England. Hands-on classes provide guidance in the basics of bonsai design and care in a group setting. More at bonsaibar.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. When he founded Wikipedia 25 years ago, Jimmy Wales probably had a utopian vision for how his user-moderated, always free online encyclopedia would inform the world. He probably did not imagine how our next guest has used the website, amassing an audience in the millions by sharing screenshots of the oddest blurbs in the farthest reaches of Wikipedia. Annie Rauwerda is the mastermind behind Depths of Wikipedia, which we should say is not just an Instagram page. Some say it's a state of mind, but it is also an in-person show on tour, and she's at the Wilbur next Thursday evening here in Boston. Annie, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're so excited to have you. For those who don't know, those who have not been initiated into the cult of Depths of Wikipedia, what's it all about?
I post interesting or unusual Wikipedia articles, and there are more than 8 million just in English, so there's a lot to choose from. There's a whole article of list of works invented in dreams. You would not believe how much you can get done by taking a nap. Baby Jesus theft is a phenomenon where people steal the Jesus from nativities. A beaver engineered dam in the Czech Republic. When a bunch of beavers did an infrastructure project the Czech government was ready to pay for anyway.
This sounds pretty fascinating. How do you find this stuff?
Clicking around.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not doing anything that special.
What's it? So can you walk me through, sort of take me into, can you take me a little bit inside of your process, which is to say, like, you know, like as you're clicking around, how do you do it? Do you sort of set aside time to do this, or you just kind of do it as you go? And then is it sort of like the bolt from the sky type of thing, like songwriters talk about? They're just noodling around on the guitar and then boom, the song kind of comes. Do you hear like that tuning fork go off when you see something you're like, oh, that is super funny, or that is super interesting?
That's a very beautiful way to put it. And sort of, yeah. I started this account during COVID, and I did definitely set aside time. But now that I edit Wikipedia so much, just as a hobby, because I became addicted to improving it, now I don't really have to set aside time to do this. I just can't stop. I have to set aside time to not do this.
I think most people generally, I think, have a broad understanding of how Wikipedia works, which is to say that it is essentially crowdsourced. It is a dictionary. It's online. People can change it. People can edit it. But as you just pointed out, you're an editor. Can you sort of lift the curtain for us a little bit on what happens behind the scenes, the life of an editor? I mean, it sounds to me like the world of the editors and the community of people who are like super editors who are editing a lot is itself a fascinating thing that could probably does have a Wikipedia page.
Many. So it's a bunch of people all over the place working together, and crowdsource is sort of true, but everything is supposed to be cited. most articles, if it's a big one that you're reading, you'll probably notice that there are many citations after every statement. But people work together. People kind of do their own things. Rules were developed early on in the process. And in your intro, you said that you thought, hey, the founder probably had a utopian vision. But what's kind of funny is that that wasn't really the case. It was a happy accident. They made it in an afternoon just to see if it would work. And it turns out people love correcting each other on the internet.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that part is pretty reflective of real life. I think people love correcting each other in real life as well. But you have.
If you like it in real life, you got to try it on the internet. It's even better.
So wait, what's so satisfying? Why is it so satisfying?
That's a tough question. Why is ice cream delicious?
Yeah.
Why does air feel good? Why does it feel great to improve somebody else's statement and make it a little bit better for everyone, and also get that ego boost of thinking I was right?
We're talking with Annie Rauwerda. She's behind Depths of Wikipedia. She's going to be performing next Thursday at the Wilbur. So let's talk a little bit, especially if people have, if they follow you on Instagram, if they've seen your stuff show up in their social media feeds. How is it like or unlike the live show that you do? How did you turn this into a live show? What happens on stage?
I started doing these a couple years ago, and I didn't know if anyone would come, and it turns out they do, and then they keep coming, and I think people are having fun. I have a slideshow, and so if you hate PowerPoint comedy, you probably shouldn't come to this.
Not for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
okay.
a warning.
And I don't mind. And I talk about Wikipedia articles, but what I'm able to do in the live shows, which is really fun, is get into so much more depth about the drama that happens behind the scenes. There is just an entire world back there of people fighting about whether it should be called corn or maize. Shockingly controversial.
Really?
Things like I think the gender of Garfield came up because Jim Davis accidentally made a statement about how he's just a cat. He said he's just a cat. There's no gender. It doesn't matter. And then Wikipedia had to, this became a whole thing.
Yeah.
And so if that is happening on more trivial topics, you can imagine the level of passion and care and just human energy that's going into like changing a single sentence in the Trump article, for example.
Right. Yeah. So for you, as somebody who has plumbed the depths of Wikipedia, so to speak, and found all kinds of delightful things. Can you, I hate asking people like, what is my favorite or what's your top 10, but can you just give us a couple of things that have delighted you beyond belief that they exist? That, like that feeling of this is just, the world is a better place because this is in it. What are some examples that you have found on Wikipedia?
I love that Wikipedia has a list of sexually active popes. There are way more than you would think.
Really? In recent times as well, or are they all older popes?
Mostly older.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because I feel like that is one of the main. That's like a you had one job situation. That's the main thing the Pope's known for. I love an article. It's called Fidel Castro and Dairy, and it's about how Castro of Cuba was obsessed with cows, ice cream, and it's a whole saga that I will not tell you because you should just go and read it if you're interested. Crime in there is crime in Antarctica, and it's really hard to get first responders out there. The list of wrong anthem incidents is like both tragic and also the funniest thing I've ever seen.
What is it? What is a wrong anthem incident? When somebody sings the wrong words?
It's when most of the examples are when like athletes or champions are standing on podiums, and then the organizers of the event accidentally play the wrong song. So sometimes it's offensive for example, Kazakhstan in 2012, somebody won a shooting competition, and they played the song from Borat, which is a fictional movie. That was a fictional movie, and that's not the real national anthem. But even worse is that same year, Kazakhstan, for a ski festival, the event organizers mistakenly played "Livin' La Vida Loca."
Oh my God. Incredible. We're talking with Annie Rauwerda. She is the person behind Depths of Wikipedia. She's performing next Thursday at the Wilbur. She's also got a huge following on Instagram and the socials, as they say. I want to talk about the nature of the word trivia, because I'm sure that comes up a lot in your life. People are like, it's like trivia and fun facts kind of thing. But you have, in the past, you have made a defense. You have sort of defended the notion of what other people might call trivial information. I've heard you describe some of this stuff or trivia as information that carries no responsibility at all, which I really like. What do you kind of mean by that?
That's kind of a good line.
Yeah, that was your line. That was your line. You said that.
Yeah, trivia is free. It's fun and it hooks you. And usually you'd be really hard pressed to find a piece of trivia that doesn't lead you into a topic that's absolutely not trivial at all. Now I should think of some examples, but off the top of my head, I'm struggling. But everything matters. Even if it is sexually active popes, maybe the few words that you're reading aren't that deep into the history of the Catholic Church, but it doesn't take long until suddenly you are learning about when they signed the papers that said actually the popes can't have sex anymore.
Yeah, I think about the nature of Wikipedia and, the internet more broadly. We talk about just hyperlinks, blue hyperlinks, and the fact that, on a site like Wikipedia, as you point out, you may start with something very trivial, but even just with a few clicks, you can be in a very deeply academic place learning.
Suddenly it's World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I'm thinking of now is there's an article called "The Staff Ate It Later." And what that is a caption shown when food appears in a Japanese TV program to indicate that it was not thrown away after filming. The staff ate it later.
Fascinating.
I think that is information with no responsibility, but I'm so curious now about Japanese culture, about Japanese TV. What are the cooking shows that are happening? So that's where I would start clicking.
So the other thing I think about when I think about Wikipedia, it to a certain extent, it feels like something that was born in an internet of a different time. I think I can remember the time when the internet was really first being adopted widely and all of the promise that came with it and the idea of that all of this human knowledge was going to be made available. I think in recent years, we've seen some of the negative effects as well, including and in particular on social media. But a few years ago, you did an interview and you were still sort of making the case for an internet optimism. Do you still have that internet optimism?
Perhaps a little bit less, but the thing that does make me, it gives me some comfort, is that underneath all the slop, the good stuff is mostly still there. And the good stuff that has disappeared is usually accessible via the Internet Archive. So that makes me happy, but yeah, I'm with you.
All right, we've been speaking with Annie Rauwerda, creator of Depths of Wikipedia. Her stage show, by the same name, is at the Wilbur next Thursday evening at 7:30. You can go to thewilbur.com for tickets and information. Annie, thanks so much for joining us here on the Curiosity Desk.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, the food that many people love to mock also has sincere fans. We're talking Spam, and we've got two chefs who are going to elevate our thinking about it just ahead. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
Make getting ready for the day the most productive part of your day.
From the GBH Newsroom in Boston, I'm Mark Hurst.
Get the local news you need to know. Traffic and transit updates. And weather with meteorologist Dave Epstein.
A gusty wind in the afternoon, partly cloudy.
When you're getting ready, get ready with us.
Time to round up the week with our incisive politics reporter, Adam Riley.
GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News app.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Brookmeadow at Cobb Center, an assisted living community offering wellness, care, and support services, including an on-site fitness specialist to help seniors stay physically active. More at brookmeadowslr.com. And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Welcome to another edition of The Secret Ingredient, where we dust off a single food item in our pantries and learn how professional chefs put it to use, and hopefully empower you to be a little more creative in your kitchen. Joining us today is our stalwart guide, James Beard-winning chef Irene Li, and joining her is Laurence Louie, the chef and owner at Rubato, a modern Hong Kong cafe counter-service restaurant based in Quincy. He's also a contestant on the upcoming season of Top Chef. And today's food is the often overlooked, some say unfairly maligned, Spam. Of course, if you were watching TV at all in the 1980s, you probably know how versatile Spam can be.
If you think Spam is just a sandwich meat, you're wrong. This special blend of pork shoulder with ham is also a great breakfast meat, and a great salad meat, a great casserole meat, a great pizza meat, and, of course, a great sandwich meat, too. Spam. It's a lot of meats, but not a lot of money.
That is a really
I don't think there's anything else to say.
That's
That really
wow.
covers it.
And thanks for that's it for the Curiosity Desk. Thanks for being here. No, Irene, Laurence, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so everybody knows what Spam is, but maybe they don't know what Spam is, which is to say they, let's get inside the can a little bit. Like what is Spam?
Should we crack one open?
Yeah, let's start by cracking one open.
Okay.
And let's get it by the microphone,
I'll crack
please.
this open into the mic, and Laurence, talk about Spam.
Spam is one of the best things in the world. It is a canned meat, pork that, I think it's a post-World War II or World War II creation, I think popularized post-World War II. And I think for me personally, it's something that, has always been around and I grew up on, and really something that, I never really you don't really think twice about it, but I think it's always been there. It's a salty meat that is, similar to the likes of bacon, ham, I don't know, more regionally specific. Well, I was just down south in the Carolinas, so liver mush. Salty meats all around the world.
Yeah.
I think Spam is probably amongst the best of them.
To me, it's just like the lowbrow canned version of charcuterie that, has seen a rise in popularity. So I love the kind of like highbrow, lowbrow element of it. And you're even seeing more of it on like fine dining menus, and it's just another pate, really.
So you talk about it always being there for you, Laurence. Can you talk about just how did you use it? How was it around in your life when you were younger?
Yeah, so I grew up Cantonese American. Spam was always, I think, a popular kind of Hong Kong style type of food. And so, I think in Hong Kong, it became popular because it was access to Western food at a cheap price.
Yeah.
And where, normally I think you see kind of these British and American influences as fine dining and inaccessible for the working class Chinese. Spam was one of those things that was just it was everywhere. And so, you found it in these things called ta tan tangs, which are, Hong Kong cafes that do breakfast, lunch mostly. But we used to eat that on everything. My mom, she was a full-time teacher. Both my parents were full-time teachers. And when she didn't have time, it was
and also a rock star. We'll get into that.
And a rock star.
Yes.
Yeah.
Full-time teacher and rock star and Spam lover. This is a cool mom.
Yeah, very cool mom.
Go
Much
ahead.
cooler than me. But yeah, we would have it for dinner. It was rice, Campbell beans out of the can, and Spam on a pan fried in a pan, and it was just one of the best things ever. And we'd do that in that form. We would do sandwiches after school. Instant noodles, one of the first things I ever cooked on my own, and it was always with Spam and eggs. So it's always been around.
How about, did you eat Spam growing up, Irene?
I had a little bit of Spam growing up. Certainly a lot of instant noodles growing up. And I think that for so many of us who work in food professionally now, we do have these foods that were maybe convenience foods or even kind of struggle foods. I know you were talking about the poverty line earlier on the show.
Yeah.
And we might have a love-hate relationship with them. There's a comfort to it if they are the foods we grew up with. And then there's also sometimes controversy or complexity under that. And I think that's what Laurence captures so well in in this dish that's on the menu at Rubato, the spam bolo bao. And my husband and I are both obsessed with this dish, so we're really excited to have it for you to try.
When you say complexity, like the complexity of of this particular food item, what are you referring to?
Well, I think there's definitely a history around the industrialization of food, around war and colonialism. I don't know if it's good. No one would say it's not an ultra processed food.
Sure.
I think.
Sure.
You probably wouldn't want to eat it every day, but it does have that kind of level of comfort. It carries that identity with it. I love traveling to Hawaii, which is like Asian American Wakanda, and you can get spam anywhere in Hawaii. It's
but there's
on the menu everywhere.
Yeah. A lot of it's one of these things, right? And as the guy behind the curiosity desk, people always be, like spam's huge in Hawaii, and
Totally.
I'm like, sure, but there's more to the story. Then there's like a reason why.
Yeah, so part of why spam really took off in Hawaii, it's a shelf-stable meat, so it can survive those tropical temperatures. But also, around the time of Japanese internment during World War II, there were a lot of sanctions and restrictions placed on the Japanese and Japanese Americans living in Hawaii. So deep-sea fishing was heavily sanctioned and limited. And so for proteins, a lot of Hawaiians came to rely on the processed foods that were kind of getting pumped out of mainland America.
All right, you are listening to the Curiosity Desk. We are talking with chefs Irene Li and Laurence Louie from Rubato about spam. All right, let's talk. Let's get into how we might use spam. Now, one of the things people talk about is the I guess it's the gelatin or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Now, my understanding is fairly recently, sometime in the 2000s, there was maybe an additional ingredient put into the spam that has mitigated some of that gelatin, but it's still there, right? Like that's like the first thing I think people are like, how do I deal with the gelatin?
It's funny. I never, we cook a lot of spam at the restaurant, and obviously we open a lot of cans of spam. And there has been less gelatin than I remember.
Yeah, I think it's potato starch.
Yeah, I think they've added potato starch, which is supposed to sop up some of the gelatin. So, I mean,
Innovation.
I didn't mind the gelatin. I mean, I didn't eat it. Like, it wasn't like, it was always just a part of the experience.
Yeah.
It was always kind of like it was just part of that opening up a can of spam. There's always that gelatin, but that's interesting.
Yeah. And, for me, cooking spam at home, it's always about the spam fried rice or the spam and eggs. Anywhere where you would put bacon or ham, really, I think it does well. And Laurence, do you want to tell us what you do with it at Rubato?
Yeah, let's get into what happens at Rubato, Laurence.
Yeah. So, I think really the menu at Rubato is inspired by kind of my upbringing as a Cantonese American kid turned chef. And so, we have a section of the menu that is called bolo bao, which is this kind of traditional Cantonese baked good. And so it's, and with Western influence, so it's almost like a brioche kind of buttery baked bao. On top, you have like a cookie crust. And so there's this kind of sweet but not too sweet kind of thing. And then I think when you put in the spam, we do it with a piece of fried spam, steamed egg, and a Kraft single. And the Kraft single is almost like the not so secret ingredient, but very key to this as
why. So why the Kraft single, right? You could go with any kind of cheese here, but you're making a statement in some way here.
Yeah, I mean this is Chinese American in a box to me. Like this is like you have the bolo bao, which is a very specific cultural reference. Spam, which is almost like everyone kind of knows what it is. Everyone has some sort of core memory with it, I feel like. And then I think for me it was about making a breakfast sandwich out of it. And the steamed egg is a very classic way, Cantonese way of preparing egg. It's a lot lighter, it's fluffier, it's less greasy. And I think the contrast to the spam, the Kraft single in particular is like anytime you have a breakfast sandwich, right? That's
what it's got to be.
That's what it is.
It
right?
just
like
has to be.
That's that taste. That's a breakfast sandwich taste.
It's the taste. It's the texture. I mean, it's even the color. Like can't beat that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this looks amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a bite of this
Please
thing.
do.
This is intense.
Yeah, and the idea is balance. Like we want the balance of the savory, the sweet, the saltiness, all that to kind of come together.
And I'm getting all of that. Oh, that's good. But the spam is featured. Like it is like that is no doubt, and it's delicious. And you're right, against the sweetness of the bun and the saltiness of the ham is just like right? That's what it's doing in my mouth. It feels like it's just kind of like little sparks going on.
Yeah, this is a habit-forming sandwich.
All right, a couple things. We got a YouTube comment from John Hogan who says they have a special Spamalot edition of Spam signed by Michael Palin. last winter that can start to bulge. So I cut off the label to save it and threw out the can. So didn't open the can, cut off the label, but has a Spamalot edition of Spam. Speaking of that, let's hear a little from Monty Python.
Don't make a fuss, dear. I'll have your spam. I love it. I'm having spam, 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 baked beans, spam, spam, and spam.
That's the Rubato theme song, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna put that up against. We also have a YouTube poll up right now, and 71% of people say they are not sold on spam. So let's talk about why. So despite all of what we're talking about here, I think to a certain extent, spam is still much maligned or given quite a wide berth by people. Why do we think that is?
I mean, it's gross.
It's gross. Is it any grosser than any other ingredient?
Well,
you know what I mean? When
exactly.
you talk about any meat ingredient, it's kind of like, I mean, hamburger is gross, you know?
Totally. I mean, I think it's the idea that it's out of a can. I think the sound that it makes when it comes out of the can, the texture. I was telling Irene the other day, like it's interesting when I'm training chefs to cut for this dish. Cutting spam is actually kind of difficult because it's not like any other texture. When you're cutting meat, when you're cutting vegetables, there's a certain texture that everything has naturally. Spam is very unnatural in that way, but I'd say there's, I think there is something to say about this kind of cultural connection that it has and where it starts as this kind of like easy access, quick food, salty, delicious, whatever. It's, I think in the same way, it's not any worse than any of these other products, bacon or anything like that. And so I think for me, it's more about like culturally, like what does that tie you to? And I have no loyalty to Hormel or like, like that. But I think it's important in those ways. And I think that's something to highlight.
Yeah, and I would say if you're not sold on spam, that's okay, and we understand. And Rubato is a great place
there you go. Yeah.
to go experience spam in this way that is very thoughtful. It's fried to a beautiful, almost like caramelized crisp. You can also, grab a spam musubi, which is like a rice, almost like a rice ball. You can go to Manoa Poke for that. So if you're not sold on cracking it out of the can and wiping off all the gel, visit one of the restaurants and they'll fix you right up.
All right, so poll update now from the producers here. The numbers are getting closer. 41% of people are saying they love spam. 50% are not. So we're normalizing here. So we have mentioned a couple times Rubato as a Hong Kong cafe. What is that? What does that mean? What?
Yeah, I mean, my mom is from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I grew up Cantonese American, and really, like, as a chef, Rubato's my first restaurant. I hope to have more, but, I think really what it was about was cooking something that spoke to my experience as a person and as a chef. And so I think opening this restaurant, like, there was a lot of amalgamation of, like, Chinese and American, naturally. And I think as we were kind of creating the menu, the Hong Kong idea really came up. Like, it kind of came to fruition on its own, really, and being like, oh, actually, this is a lot of just, like, Hong Kong-inspired food because of the history of, British colonialism, American presence, all that in Hong Kong. There's almost this natural cuisine that came out of that, and I think that was something that, I think just spoke to me. And so I think Rubato is really trying to highlight that and trying to bring that out.
Now, Laurence, you have a pretty interesting backstory with how you got from I'm not a chef to now I am chef owner of a restaurant. Can you just tell us about that journey a little bit? Because I find it to be very interesting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, food's always been present in my life. I got my master's in American Studies, hoping to be a professor. To me, academia was not the path, and then became a community organizer. Worked in Boston Chinatown for a while, organizing high school age youth, and then essentially took a year off, went to China, studied Mandarin, played basketball, hand-pulled noodles.
Professionally played basketball, or just like for fun played basketball?
Yes. No. Not professionally. I wasn't that good. But thank you for.
Well,
thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for not assuming. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
And then I came back and I think I felt like all these kind of experiences, being connected to the community, wanting to bring people together, all that. Food was often at the center of it, and so I wanted to kind of be a part of creating that, and I think really working with my hands, and so got a job at Oleana here in Cambridge, and never looked back from there, and moved to London, worked for 10 years as a chef, and then came back to take over my mom's bakery in Quincy that she had operated for 22 years before I took over.
Wow.
Let's talk about that bakery. Though.
Yeah, can we talk? Yeah, let's talk about the bakery.
Yeah. Bakery was called Contempo, named after a rock band that my mom started. So she, came from Hong Kong, just wanted to learn music, taught herself like piano, drums, guitar, bass, and started a band to do like canto pop, essentially like 90s canto rock music.
So sick.
That's amazing. So just covering like canto pop. And did she ever cover this song?
You don't say ham, you say spam.
That's going to be the next single for sure.
Let's make sure we put it on her radar.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll pitch it.
Yeah.
I'll pitch it.
I think you ought to pitch that.
See if it makes the next show. And essentially they were practicing in Chinatown and got gentrified out of that space.
Yeah.
Rent was too expensive, and Quincy at that time, this was the year 2000, was this kind of like just on the cusp of becoming like the biggest working class Chinese community, outside of Chinatown. And so, she and her lead singer / drummer, who was working at a bakery then, were like, let's start a business. The only requirement that we absolutely need is, yes, it's a bakery, but then we need space. So in the basement, there's this huge room that they use to practice.
That's so cool.
And I think the last
They still
time
practice there.
They still practice.
It's the dream. It's like bakery / rehearsal space.
Yes.
I mean, that is awesome.
And so that was kind of the vision, and it's been going on for the last 20 some years. And that was the one thing that she said when I took over. She's like, just don't kick me out of my space. I'm like, I'm not going to evict you out of your own, like.
And then the name for the business.
Yeah.
Share that. I love this.
Yeah. So Contempo was, that was the band that started with the band, and it was contemporary tempo. When we changed to Rubato is the musical term for change of tempo.
Oh, amazing.
And so we wanted to kind of honor her
little
legacy. And really play on that and try and,
A couple of YouTube comments here. Joe loved Contempo. Their kanji was so good.
Oh, love that.
We also have a poll update. We're at 41% of people loving Spam, 59% not.
Oh, it's going up.
And then we've got another comment in our YouTube chat which says, Spam, eggs, and rice at my wife's Tito's house is always a highlight of visiting my Filipino in-laws.
Yes, absolutely.
Good way to use it. I know we've covered this a little bit, but again, if I'm feeling brave and I do want to take on some Spam, and, obviously, it's first order of operations, go to Rubato and definitely try this sandwich, which is amazing. But then beyond that, I want to try some at home. Give me some easy entry points and some tips of how to keep my nerve as I go for it.
Yeah, I think like anything that's widely consumed, if you do it right, usually it's a lot better than you think. And so I think Spam, I would say the best way to do is pan fry. Get a pan.
Did you slice it or like?
Yeah, slice it. I'd say
thin, thick.
Yeah. Quarter. What's that? Quarter to half an inch. I'd say is probably the ideal. Slice, so it doesn't dry out. Some people like it really crispy, like crispy versus not crispy bacon.
Yeah.
I think it should just have a nice sear, but kind of retain the moisture of the natural spamness of it all. But
you can also dice it for soup or fried rice. I made Thanksgiving stuffing with Spam in it once.
You?
That was
that's
really
a
good.
move.
Yeah,
I love that move.
But yeah, I think it's more user friendly than you would think.
Yeah. Before we go, we've been talking about Rubato. You talk about Quincy. Let's just talk in general. If people have not taken the time to go eat in Quincy at Rubato or otherwise, can we just talk about like what's going on in Quincy in the food scene?
Yeah, I mean Quincy's hot, and especially that block that we're on right now. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. I think, it's pretty amazing to me because it grew from this, like, growing up in my mom's bakery, like I saw the kind of Chinese American community growing, and now it's almost shifting, or not even shifting, but just in addition, there's this like really cool food scene that's coming up. So we're there right across the street. Peter Nguyen with La Madeleine is there. He was just nominated for James Beard Award this year doing like modern Vietnamese food. There's Nivu Bakery, and Robbie over there is doing some really cool pastries and stuff. And there's just a lot of cool things happening in Quincy. I think not only as a traditional, Chinese dining hub, but I think there's some cool things kind of popping up that, you see around, you don't see around the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been speaking with James Beard award-winning chef Irene Li and Laurence Louie from Rubato. By the way, you can catch him on the latest season of Top Chef. I assume you can't tell us how it went.
I can't say how it went. But the first episode, Early Access, is coming out tonight, so folks can find out.
There you go. Check it out. And we are now joined by Jared Bowen of The Culture Show here in studio. Jared, spam?
I have been, as one might expect from the Culture Show host, to the Spam Museum in Austin,
Amazing.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Tell us about what.
So you can taste pineapple spam, jalapeno spam, regular spam, sugar spam. I mean, and it all goes in this assembly line at the top of the museum. The whole history of spam. It's a really fun detour on a road trip.
That's crazy. Did you get any souvenirs in the gift shop?
I did. This is really funny. I got a spam T-shirt, and a friend of mine happened to have a Tabasco T-shirt. So together, we're an hors d'oeuvre. And we do stand next to each other sometimes in the summer wearing the T-shirts.
Yes. That's awesome. What do you have coming up on the Culture Show?
We're going to space by way of Cady Coleman, who has written her book Sharing Space. Of course, very prominent female astronaut at a time when there were not a lot of women astronauts. Cool. So she changed the nature of space, especially for women. We'll talk about the Boston Symphony Orchestra and New England Conservatory joining for BSO NEC, a new alliance, bringing all of their prowess in the education field, the orchestral field together. And then the Boston group Battlemode joins us about their upcoming chiptune music festival called Boston Bitdown. They're going to teach me how to make music with a Game Boy.
All right. Well, that is, if you got to stick around. That's just moments away on the Culture Show with Jared Bowen. The Curiosity Desk team made today possible. Our endless thanks to them. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them. 4 women from different walks of life shared a common purpose to shape the civil rights movement. Their story resonates today as it did in the 60s and 70s. Learn about them on Of the People, Women of the Civil Rights Movement, tonight at 7:30 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, she's orbited Earth, lived in zero gravity, and helped redefine who belongs in space. Astronaut Cady Coleman joins us for Women's History Month to talk about her mission aboard the International Space Station, what it takes to dig in and push past limits, expand horizons, and give others a lift for launch. Then, for generations, the Boston Symphony Orchestra and New England Conservatory have shaped the sound of classical music. Now they're making that relationship official. We talk with Chad Smith and Andrea Kalyn about the new BSO NEC Alliance and what it means for Boston's musical future. And before laptops and synths, there was the Game Boy. Now musicians are turning that handheld gaming console into a live instrument. On the eve of the Boston Bitdown Chiptune Music Festival, Boston group Battlemode joins us and teaches me how to build a track in real time, using nothing but 8-bit sound, where Donkey Kong and Zelda are the playground. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Cady Coleman has floated more than 200 miles above Earth, watching 16 sunrises a day, a view that collapses borders and redefines what feels possible. When she joined NASA in the early 1990s, women were reshaping the culture of spaceflight, not just flying missions, but changing who could imagine themselves there. Coleman made that one of her chief missions, to open the hatch that much wider. She reflects on that trajectory in her book, Sharing Space, An Astronaut's Guide to Mission, Wonder, and Making Change. As we continue to observe Women's History Month, she joins us to talk about it all. Tomorrow night, you can catch her in person at the BPL's Central Library in Copley Square at 6 for an author talk. Cady Coleman, welcome back to the Culture Show. Great to see you again.
It's great to see you too.
Well, we have a bit of an echo there. We'll try to figure that out. That's not you coming from space right now, we should point out.
You know, I'm hearing it too, and it started in the middle of the introduction. Not your introduction, but the one of the show.
Well, we'll try to work on that but we'll get the conversation started. I want to start with the title of your book, which is called Sharing Space. How much is that about what you recognized needed to be expanded in this industry?
Well, I think it's everything, actually. You know, and it's fun. It's funny. It's not that I was up there and thought I'm going to write a book and I'm going to call it that, but getting to have that experience, I just felt so fortunate. And you feel like you bring so many people with you, or at least you try. And as I started to make plans about, what to put in my book, I realized that this is kind of who I am. I really, even when it's not, I'm retired from NASA now, it's not really exactly my job, but I think we all, we're all on a path for a reason. And part of that is to create ripples that affect other people and make their lives better.
How did that start with another astronaut who really stirred something in you to set you on your own trajectory?
That was Dr. Sally Ride. It was the main impetus there, where I was a junior at MIT, and I saw at the time we would advertise things with posters on the wall, okay? And I saw an advertisement for her talk, and I just thought, oh, I really want to go see that talk. And it turned, and when just seeing her on the stage just made me, and we're a tiny bit alike, short, dark hair, and, not too tall. And I just felt like I could relate to her, and that meant everything to me. And I actually grew up in a house where exploration was really normal. My dad was a deep sea diver, but I never saw myself in those roles until I met Sally. But many other women and men actually have been very generous with their time, their perspective, and their encouragement, and that's made a really big difference for me.
How arduous would you describe it is to enter into the NASA space program and ultimately make your way to space?
There is a right place, a right time, but I think the most important part of being able to have that job, or any job that you want, is to be able to put on a piece of paper or on an application, explain to people in a way they can understand it, why you should be on their team. And so people ask about how I got to be an astronaut, and I say, I applied. And I'm not trivializing that process, but, explaining what you do, first sentence, something that everybody and everyone you meet at the grocery store would understand about what it was and why it was important. And then you could go deeper after that. But always just thinking about, what am I proud of, and why would someone need that on their team, and how can I make sure they know it about me?
What would you describe would be, if you can look back at it now, what really galvanized the people that were looking at your submission, and if there was one thought you expressed about why you?
It's hard to say. I would tell you a very funny thing from the interview, which is, if you've done your homework, and doing your homework is important. But back then, I think now the interviews you're not supposed to talk about them, but back then people would talk. And if you'd done your homework, you knew that they're going to say, tell us about yourself starting with college. And I was ready. And then they said, tell us about yourself starting with high school. And I'm like, well, I took a lot of chemistry, and I really liked chemistry, and I became a chemist, and I played in the band, and I was clearly a little flummoxed. And one of the guys looked at me and goes, what do you play? I said, the flute. He goes, do you think you could play the intro to Stairway to Heaven? And I said, yes. He goes, good. And he wrote it down.
So he didn't make you produce a flute right then and there and play.
He did not, but he was actually the leader of the Astronaut band, it turns out, but Hoot Gibson. But he went out of his way to make me feel comfortable, and they really want people to come as themselves, because you're going to be yourself every day that you work there, and you need to show up as you are and realize that everybody brings gifts. But also the biggest thing for people to know is that when a job like that, when they say no, they don't mean no, they mean not yet. And so I think it's the right thing to think about for everything that people want to do is not yet, or maybe you need to try a different door or knock a different way.
That is so valuable for people to hold on to in so many sectors in regard to their careers and otherwise. Well, let's move to space now. And you have talked about teamwork here, but you've also talked about the importance of the I in team as you came to learn in your time in space. What does that mean?
Well, I think a good example is really how the mission of going to space, the missions that we're going to accomplish, they are bigger than we are. I helped launch the Chandra X-ray Observatory. Its home started off as Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it's still being run up in Burlington. It's the telescope that tells us literally everything about black holes that we know. And so that mission is bigger than any of us and bigger than the shuttle crew that was one part of its journey getting to space. And whether that shuttle crew wished that we were different from each other, that, Katie didn't talk so much, she didn't do things at the last minute, all those things. And so it's important that you understand that the mission is bigger than all of you, and it's also important that you realize that you bring a perspective that no one else has. And I don't just mean me or you, Jared. It's all of us have a perspective. They don't even know that other people don't see the world that way. And to realize that perspective is really important. And that's the individual on team. I know we like to say there is no I in team, but it's the most important part, and you have to use it carefully.
I think a lot of us wonder about the International Space Station and the astronauts who come together up there as things come apart here on Earth. And I'm wondering if you encountered that and what the level of diplomatic relations are, international relations are aboard the space station.
Well, that's where focusing on what we have in common is really what leads to getting the mission done. And when I was up there, we were 2 Americans, 1 Italian, and 3 Russians. And we all have, different beliefs about probably almost everything. And yet, really focusing on what we have in common, which is getting that mission done, that's what accomplishes that. And we're like any other family or group of friends where there's some people you talk about, current events and politics and things like that, and some people you don't. Everybody's different about the conversations that they have. But one day really stuck out to me from my time up there, and I was up there in 2000 on the space station, 2010, 2011, and back then we would get our news in on the television news 24 hours late. And we happened to have been gathered around the window together, looking out and going over the Middle East. It's actually quite beautiful, just the contrast of the land and the water, and you can see different land use. It's a fascinating region. And I remember really just remarking on that. And the next day we found out that there had been a UN intervention in Libya. And bombings had occurred. And to realize that place that we thought was just like we saw it every day, life down there had to be so different for everyone and life around the world. And I found myself wondering this weekend what it's like on the space station, what people are thinking, who they're calling home and who they're calling back home, and what they're talking about. In that it's a very human experience to be up there, and you may think that space is far away, but what I discovered is that being in space is just a different perspective on home, and a very important one.
I'm speaking with Cady Coleman, retired U.S. astronaut, U.S. Air Force colonel, scientist, pilot, and musician. We'll get back to the flu in a moment. Her latest book is Sharing Space, An Astronaut's Guide to Mission Central Library in Copley Square. I was wondering about that. Perfect segue. You were just talking about looking at the war breaking out in Iran and thinking about what it might be like to have that perception in space and to be experiencing that in space. Do you continue to long to go back there?
Oh, absolutely. I would go in a minute. And yet at the time I would have stayed another 6 months in a minute. And I think that has to do, all of us like to be useful. And it has to do with how much the work that we do up there and how important when you're up there you can tell that it is. I'm actually not doing my science experiments or my engineering technology demonstrations for going back to the moon. I'm actually doing the work of others up there and being part of their team. And so it's really clear that there's things that we can find out there in a scientific way that are really beneficial down here on Earth, but also will lead to better and faster exploration.
What would you say was one of the most profound understandings you had for something you participated in, that you may not have even understood why you were necessarily doing it until the results came in back here on Earth and you understood the significance?
It might sound boring, but there's this liquids experiment where it was literally different containers of different shapes, and your job was to sort of jiggle them or introduce fluid at a certain rate or just things like that, and the ground would be participating, and their data was just video and stills of this liquid entering a chamber or being jostled or bubbles. And one day we did this experiment, and then the next week they had us do it again, and we're thinking, boy, did we mess it up? And when I got back to the ground, I found out that what they saw the first week about the behavior of fluids, because these are really tiny forces that change the behavior of fluids. And when you take away gravity, this big force, well, those tiny forces are the biggest game in town, and you can really see them. And it turns out that what they found was just so amazing and unexpected. They invited all these different fluids experts the next week to come. They had to see it for themselves. So I loved being part of those things, and it was clear when you were up there that those things were every data point that you took got somebody, maybe not you, one step closer to living on the moon and going to Mars.
Sleeping. You didn't, I read this in your book, you didn't always tether yourself. Of course, we know you can just float around in space, but did you always not tether yourself as you were, I don't even know what you call it. Do you call it going to bed? What do you call it when you retire in space?
We call it going to bed, always a little bit too late in my case. Actually, my crewmate, we do have cabins, okay? And it's the size, if anybody remembers what a phone booth is like, it's about the size of a phone booth or, very much a smaller bathroom stall, right? Enough room for you, your computer. Your sleeping bag is hooked to the wall. And that's what I mean when not tethered, is that some people like the sleeping bag to be hooked to the wall, whereas I like to slither into it, and then I'd unhook it, and I'd actually tuck my knees up. So then I'm like a little ball in my cabin, and I'd wake up and I might be like looking at the bottom of my desk, and I just think, oh, I am still here. I was also going to add that my crewmate Paolo was Nespoli from Italy, was just a power napper. We had 10 minutes to wait for something. You'd look around and Paolo would be like on the floor down here on Earth, taking a nap. And up in space, he would tuck his feet in, and you just see Paolo just like sound asleep. And then 10 minutes later, awake.
How long would you sleep if you were going to bed for the night? Could you do that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it depends. If you sleep well on Earth, you sleep well in space. And if you don't sleep well on Earth, you're probably not so great in space. I tell students, especially, if I went back, I would sleep more on the International Space Station. I mean, because certainly I could have. I was a kind of, have to have your time alone at the end of the night to kind of get things together and figure out what you're thinking about for the next day, and that's really good to do. And at the same time, I mean, there are so many proven studies to show that you show up as more of yourself with a brain that is fresh and full of more ideas and better ones if you sleep. I'm speaking, of course, to my, our kids, but actually, really, those college kids. I mean, go to bed.
Yes.
Go to bed. Wake up in the morning. Go to bed.
I'm a champion sleeper myself. I completely understand that. You need to be. What was the biggest change, biggest physical change on your body that you realized when you returned to Earth?
Mostly your vestibular system, which sounds boring, but it's actually quite violent. And then it takes so little force to move up there. I can take a hair from my head, push against any sort of railing, and it will just push me across the whole space station. So it doesn't take much force to move. And then when you come, your body's gotten used to that. Your head has gotten used to it. You come back to Earth, and the first step, it's like being a giant, and the whole world is just kind of going back and forth. It's really very nauseating. A lot of us, I can speak for myself, take medication after we land, and it works, which is really good. But even a couple weeks later, if I would like bend down to tie my shoes, I'd feel like the whole world kind of came with me.
Oof. Yeah, not a great feeling. Well,
no, it is. It's like delightful.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, not a bad. I mean, because by then you've kind of figured things out, but you still have this like little vestige of like, oh, I'm still from that place.
That's a nice feeling. Better than a postcard, certainly. We mentioned the flu. You were, as I mentioned, you're a musician. That came up in your interview for NASA. You conducted this really extraordinary, groundbreaking concert from space. Before we hear a little bit of it, tell me what you and your compatriot did in this duet.
Well, when you get to take some things officially up there, I mean, everything's official, okay? But these, count in the sort of NASA official spreading the word of space, out there. And there's more room for those. So I brought actually several flutes. One was from my own flute from the Powell Company here in Massachusetts. I brought 2/3 of my flute. And then the mouthpiece was the Powell Company's, and that way when I got home, they have the mouthpiece. It runs around in this flute mobile around the country, and even beginner flute players can play the flute that went to space, which is very cool. But I also brought flutes for the Chieftains, an Irish band. I'm quarter Irish on each side, so I brought a 100-and-something-year-old Irish flute and a tin whistle from Paddy Maloney and Matt Malloy. And last but certainly not least is Jethro Tull. I loved that he brought the flute and improvisation to rock music. And so in honor of that and to thank him, I brought one of his flutes up to space. And we played a song called Bourrée, which is this really classical song, but he's always like, this is the guy who stands on one foot and runs around the stage. And it turns out that on the 50th anniversary of human spaceflight on April 12th, 2011, he was playing a concert in Russia, and I was on the International Space Station celebrating that 50 years. And so we celebrated that with that duet between Earth and space.
Let's hear a little bit of that now. Again, Jethro Tull on the ground in Russia, Cady Coleman in space, flu duet. How did you do that? How did you sync to be able to make that happen?
In that case, time was tight in the most efficient way. Somebody has to follow the other person. If you play it live, you really could do it live, but it takes a lot of international, in our case, coordination. And so he actually recorded a track that I listened to and then I played along with. There wasn't a lot of time, so that is twice through the music and one take with the flute kind of floating down.
That's incredible.
I'm very proud, you can tell. He's a wonderful man who's really so curious and interested in space and technology and the way people relate to each other.
Well, final question for you. There's so much talk about the Artemis mission right now, which if people haven't been following, this is our lunar mission. There are a whole new crew who will orbit the moon and then at some point land on the moon. NASA keeps, as they do, based on safety reasons and other issues, keeps delaying it or changing what will happen. But what do you see in this mission and what this new age of opportunity, especially for those of us who haven't seen anything like this in a long time or maybe never before seen space exploration like this, what this represents?
Well, it's something I'm actually hoping people get from my book, candid stories talking about what it's like to be something that is so much bigger than you are. And that is that NASA and NASA's partners, these are people that are living, breathing, working on on exploring the universe, in all different ways, but specifically going back to the moon to live there, stay, learn lessons in preparation for going further to Mars. And now that I'm on the outside as well, we only see them when they're like parked, the rocket's parked at the launch pad and they're getting ready to go and doesn't quite work. But what is really important to remember is that basically, every time you wake up in the morning, somebody at NASA or their partners is waking up living the life of course we're going to space. It's a question of when and how. And this week there was a really, last week, really, I think a really courageous statement by the new NASA administrator to say, we're looking at how this would work in the future. And the next mission after this one was quite ambitious, where we're going to have rockets that have to refuel each other and several different kinds of ships that have to, rendezvous together and then trade the crew and then go down to the surface. And we're planning to assemble all of those things in orbit around the moon and try them out for the first time. And it's not the way to be successful, because if we fly rockets, every couple of years, and finally in a bunch of years are ready to do that mission, the chances of it not succeeding are just too great, and it's not who NASA is. And it took a lot of courage for Jared Isaacman to say, we're going to take a different pace. We're going to have a bunch of shorter missions where we practice all those rendezvous and the really hard parts. We're going to practice them in orbit around the Earth before we then bring the whole production to the moon. And it's going to take longer. He said 2027, 28. I don't know if I'm betting on those dates, but I am betting on the importance of standing up and speaking your perspective that you have. And he's done that, and I think I think people are pretty excited, and remember, those excited NASA folks are working every day to get all of us to the moon.
Well, thank you for your perspective on that. We look forward to having continued conversations with you about that and so many other issues. It's always great to speak with you. Thank you so much, and good luck with your talk tomorrow night.
Thank you. I got my start at the library in high school, so I'm excited to be coming to the Boston Public Library.
It's a good place to be. We know that. We're not there this week on this show, but it's a good place to be. As I said, always great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cady Coleman is a retired NASA astronaut, U.S. Air Force colonel, scientist, pilot, and musician. Her latest book is Sharing Space, an Astronaut's Guide to Mission, Wonder, and Making Change. You can catch her tomorrow night for an author talk at 6 at the BPL's Central Library in Copley Square. Coming up, the Boston Symphony Orchestra and New England Conservatory formalize a relationship that has shaped generations of musicians and will now shape the future. That conversation is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
When news breaks,
the Israeli military says it has bombed the headquarters of Iran's intelligence ministry responsible for domestic spying on Iranians.
You can count on GBH News to keep you informed.
Iran's counterattacks in the region have now expanded to energy targets in the Gulf.
President Trump has not yet made a clear case to Americans about why his administration is joining with Israel to attack Iran.
GBH News 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Speakeasy Stage Company, presenting The Antiquities, a genre-defying retrospective on the human experience. Starts March 6th and runs through March 28th. Ticket info at speakeasystage.com. And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. Spring blossoms with Handel's water music and the first Brandenburg Concerto, led by artistic director Jonathan Cohen, April 10th and 12th at Symphony Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org. And Beacon Circle patrons Lynn Bay Dayton and Bruce Dayton, proud to support GBH 89.7 and the commitment to local, national, and global journalism inspires, engages, and supports diversity in the community.
Your financial support is what keeps GBH on the air. Thank you to everyone who gave during our recent membership drive. If you missed your chance to make a gift, you still can online at gbhnews.org. That's gbhnews.org, and thanks.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. A programming note, our BPL studio is undergoing some technical upgrades right now, so we will not be broadcasting there tomorrow or Friday. But right now, for nearly 150 years, the Boston Symphony Orchestra and New England Conservatory have each shaped the course of classical music, one from the stage, the other from the classroom. Their influence has extended far beyond Boston, setting standards for performance and training that reverberate internationally. And for generations, that influence has overlapped, with BSO musicians teaching at NEC and NEC-trained musicians stepping onto symphony hall stages, sustaining the sound and traditions of one of the world's great orchestras. Now the two institutions are formalizing their relationship with a new BSO NEC Alliance, making official a connection that has long helped define how classical music is taught, performed, and carried forward. And for the public, it comes with a host of free offerings. Joining me to talk about it all are Chad Smith, President and CEO of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and Andrea Kalyn, President of New England Conservatory. Welcome back to the show, both of you. Congratulations on this partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. And I appreciate how you said the NEC Boston Symphony partnership, and you just ignored the X. I was wondering how you were going to handle that.
Well, we did a little sleuthing. For people who don't know what you're talking about, it says, BSO X NEC, and I thought, how do you say that on air? So we did a little
say it the way
call.
you said it, yeah.
So tell me about... Chad, I'll start with you because you have a foot in both places. You are an NEC alum. Of course, now you are president and CEO of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. What to you does this represent, knowing both institutions so well?
Yeah, so I'm very proudly a graduate of NEC, and I actually have 3 degrees from NEC. My undergraduate, I did a joint program with Tufts and NEC, and then I did my master's there. And then just last year, I was really pleased to be honored with an honorary degree. And I've been a trustee of NEC for close to 8 years. So I'm deeply invested in the success of the school. It was such a transformative experience for me when I was a young 18-year-old coming to Boston, and really my mind opened up walking into that space. And I remember walking down the hall and hearing these remarkable musicians practicing and the music spilling out into the hallway. And I just
interrupt to say that's my favorite part of going to the Huntington is walking by and hearing that music spill out. So it continues still. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. But so for me, it was a very, very formative experience. And so to be able to formalize what for many of us over many generations have had as an informal relationship with the BSO, I think is really important. I will share just very briefly that, I fell in love with the orchestra hearing the Boston Symphony when I was a student, and I had very little money, so I snuck into Symphony Hall, and I snuck in for about 2.5 years before I was properly let in. But for me, it defined the sound of what an orchestra is. And so much of the great repertoire, my first Beethoven and Stravinsky, was with this orchestra. And so for me to be able to partner with Andrea and create a formal structure where students at NEC have access to the BSO, and I think, even more critically, the BSO has access to NEC, that give and take between being a professional musician and being a teacher is something that I think makes this rather remarkable.
Well, Andrea, how do you see it from your perspective? Because I love what Chad said, knowing that there is such energy that comes from youth and such creativity and ideas and openness that comes from youth. So what opportunity does it present from your perspective?
Yeah, so many. I mean, so we on the educational side are in the futures game, right? We are training these students for really robust and powerful and lives of great creativity and artistry going forward. And the BSO represents their hopes and their aspirations and their dreams. They want nothing more than not just to be at the BSO, but to be on the stage at the BSO. And so that model, you talked about the sound, Chad, and I think that's so lovely. But it's also just the idea of what it is to be a musician in the world at that level. And so for our students to have that aspiration and more opportunities in multidimensional ways to interact with the BSO, the musicians, the organization as a whole, and to really think about what it means to be a musician at that level, and also a musician in a community and in a city like Boston, and really part of that city. And that's what both of our organizations really can do.
And I think one of the things that Andrea and I really thought about is why isn't this formal?
That was going to be my next question, because your buildings are feet away from one another, these storied histories. Why now?
Yeah, well, and I think it came down to conversations that we had over the past probably 18 months of just saying, look, these are two iconic institutions that mean a great deal to our city and to our art form, and we are literally across the street from each other. And as Andrea said, if you want to see the future of music, just go to Jordan Hall on any Tuesday night. And so we at the BSO thought about let's use the assets that we have naturally as a part of our season. The great guest conductors that are coming and working with our musicians, the great soloists who are here, the composers that come for their pieces. Tom Addis was here last week, and Tom Addis gave a masterclass. But more than that, we also have shared spaces. Like Jordan Hall is arguably the finest chamber music hall in the world. Symphony Hall is credibly within that handful of the greatest concert halls in the world. Let's think about how our physical assets also can be supportive of each institution. Let's think about all of these ways that the NEC BSO partnership can be such a value add to both our musicians, our professional musicians, and the work that they do, but also to the next generation of musical leaders.
Yeah, I'll just tell you a little story. The morning that we announced, I got this beautiful email from a student, from a brass player who studies with one of the members of the BSO, and he said, I've had this incredible privilege of working with my teacher. He has transformed me as a musician and as a person, and I woke up to this news and I was just joyous because, of the new opportunities I'll have, and also just what it meant to him that these two organizations would come together, and he could see his future and all of the possibilities and the models and just everything that was possible. So it was transformative for him, and that was really exciting.
I wonder how much this also meets a moment. We're talking about a moment where federal funding cuts are having an impact on schools and arts organizations nationwide. I've seen programming become constricted here in Boston. I'm sure it's happening elsewhere too, whether we're seeing less museum exhibitions, theater seasons that have become smaller. And I think I've begun to see institutions looking at one another and wondering if there can be shared resources, and are organizations stronger together? How much of that is about what we're seeing in this country right now too?
100%. That is absolutely right. It's I think this idea of we are stronger together, right? That arts institutions can't and shouldn't go it alone. That this idea of radical collaboration, what can we do together that we can't do alone? And I think this is a perfect example of that kind of thinking.
Absolutely. I mean, collaboration is what we do as musicians naturally, right? But we need to be doing the way that we do our work. We need to be doing that as well, not just on the stages. And I, that's an important model from my perspective for our students as well. They need to understand that they can't do it alone, right? The same way that they learn from their colleagues in chamber music and in ensembles, they need to learn professionally. And so this idea of collaboration, what can we do more impactfully, and what can we do exponentially better together, both artistically, creatively, and within the city of Boston, right? To really bring music alive and make Boston an amazing place to be.
There's also such interesting kind of just numbers, right? So 55 of the musicians in the Boston Symphony were either alums or current faculty of the BSO, of NEC. There is no other major music school in the country that has that kind of density, that kind of immersion or connection between the two institutions. So it also just feels so natural and so right.
I'm speaking with Chad Smith, President and CEO of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and Andrea Kalyn, President of New England Conservatory. Together, they've launched the new BSO NEC Alliance. Well, as you look at your musicians and your future musicians, do you feel like the world is going to be vastly different than it may have ever been before? Not that artists have ever been that well supported in this country, we all know that. But again, things are changing. And is this about preparedness for a different future?
Absolutely. We think about that all of the time, as we think about our students. But I think it's also about empowering them to really create futures in new ways, right? So, and again, this models of what music can be and what institutions can be, but also developing their skills and their mindsets. Not just their artistry, but their professional preparation in broad ways, and their sense of cultural leadership, so that they can go off and really the course of the future. I think it's a moment. Talk about meeting the moment. This is a moment. The world needs music, and the world needs musicians. We're kind of the antidote to all the things that we might find problematic in the world. Collaborative and creative and human and all those sorts of things. And so we want our students to be able to lead that world.
I also think candidly, like the next generation thinking about the future of our industry is right there. So as a legacy institution like the BSO, an institution that has been here for 145 years, that is really very much about preservation, certainly, like the canon, and ensuring that we carry it forward. As we approach this moment where we need to be more innovative, we need to be thinking about how we connect more deeply, we need to be thinking about how technology is changing our world, we need to be thinking about how collaboration is the way that we're going to continue to welcome more people into our art form. So many of the ideas are coming from young people. So for me at the BSO, I want us to find a way where we provide space within the BSO to allow for really creative thinking from these young people. Like I say to my team all the time, like it can't always be the ideas in this room. We have to give space to those young people who haven't yet been knocked down to think about like those transformative ideas. And that was something that I also hope comes from
absolutely
this partnership.
Yeah. Well, going back to your point about welcoming, and I mentioned this in the introduction, there is a benefit for everyone, whether you're buying tickets to the BSO or you're a student at NEC. It seems to me that you're opening up programs, whether it be speakers or master classes, performances, and there's a free component here, which I love to talk about on this show. It's so important. What are people going to be able to experience with this partnership?
Yeah, well, one of the other ways, of course, we have an expanded education division, work a lot with children as well. And one of the things I think we're very excited about, I know Chad and I are, is the new children's chorus, Honors Children's Chorus. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, Chad?
So this idea is how do we create a space for the most talented young singers in our community to come and have an opportunity to perform with the BSO and to do it for free. But we also recognize that we operate within an ecosystem of some very, very fine children's choruses. So we don't want to be competitive. The way that we've created it and crafted it is that our honors chorus will be made up of kids who are serving and performing as a part of other children's choruses, so that it is not going to cannibalize the community, but really be value add for those top performing kids in the Boston Children's Chorus, from St. Paul's, all of these other children's choruses in our community.
And the free component is a part of what you're doing going forward.
Exactly.
I have to hold you account to
completely free. Yes, that is part of what we're doing going forward.
And also, tickets and welcoming the kids into our last week when Esapeka was here for his new horn concerto, we had something like 250 students from NEC who made the journey across and made the journey across in a way that they felt welcomed. And we want to do that not just with NEC, to be candid. We want to do that even more with the student population across Boston. Well, I love Friday afternoon concerts at the BSO, I will tell you, because they are both our oldest audience. There are many of our retirees who don't want to come in out at night, and our youngest audience, because it's the students who don't want to give up a Saturday night. So you see this incredible melange of our community here, and it's something very special, and that's something we're expanding.
It is, and it was such a delight. As I was walking across the street, there was a stream of students all sort of, trundling across, and they were so excited. And because it was free, actually, it was sort of even more special for them. They really did feel welcomed. And for them to get to go and hear their teachers perform and then go back and practice the excerpt and then come back and listen to it again is just a singular experience for them.
I love that notion of pre-gaming for the weekend at the BSO. Well, Chad, I have one follow-up question for you, but it's not from this conversation. The last time we spoke, you were sitting next to the Lieutenant Governor because you were talking about 4th of July festivities, which, of course, this year and our 250th will be huge on the Esplanade. Any other? I know you can't announce yet who.
I can tell you that we are
any other tease.
I can tell you that we are within weeks of announcing.
Very exciting.
And so I expect that obviously, and I want to share that the BSO's and the Boston Pop's performance of July 4th is this year is going to be really, really extraordinary because of our partnership with the state and because of the leadership of Governor Healy and the Lieutenant Governor. So I can't give you too much because we want to do that together. and we will. But what I can tell you is that technology, really interesting technology aspects are coming to play. So think about Boston as the center of robotics. Think about the idea of what a drone ballet with 1,500 drones might look like. If you're thinking about, for example, Paul Revere's Ride. So there will be amazing artists, which we will talk about later. But the technology side of this is not your grandfather's July 4th.
All right. So, Andrea, if I'm putting it together, last time he said an act that wouldn't be out of place at a Super Bowl halftime show, and now we're learning about technology.
Now we're learning about drones, drone ballets.
So we're getting a picture, but you do have a big announcement about Philip Glass.
We do. This is really, and we're just about to announce this today, and I'm really excited about it. I just got a note from Philip, who said that he is offering to the Boston Symphony at Tanglewood the performance of Lincoln, his Symphony Number 15. So many of you will recall that this was supposed to be premiered just in a few weeks in Washington, and he pulled that performance. But
Kennedy Center.
At the Kennedy Center. Tanglewood on July 5th, and it's a program all about Lincoln. And I can't think of another political leader from our past that I'd like to think about more at this time.
Well, that's a huge coup. Thank you for sharing it with us, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And congratulations to both of you on this partnership. I can see the big smiles on your faces right here in the studio.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Of course, Chad Smith is the president and CEO of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Andrea Kalyn is the president of New England Conservatory. Together, they've launched the new BSO NEC Alliance, formalizing a relationship that has helped shape generations of musicians. Coming up, it was designed as a gaming device. Battlemode uses it as an instrument. The Boston group joins us live and shows us how the sounds of a Nintendo Game Boy become music. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
As war heats up in the Middle East, European nations are trying to avoid direct involvement while still supporting their allies.
I don't see Europe as taking part of what could be a world conflict. I see some European countries respecting their defense commitment toward these Arab country allies.
That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Vivo Performing Arts, with an Irish celebration curated by Martin Hayes. The celebrated Irish fiddler brings together a lineup of guest artists for a vibrant cultural celebration. March 18th at Symphony Hall, vivoperformingarts.org. And Addison Gallery of American Art, presenting Parasol Press, Breaking New Ground, a survey of the print publisher's innovative works that push the boundaries of printmaking. addisongallery.org. And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering private cooking events for your next team-building activity, family reunion, birthday party, or night out. You can learn more at cambridgeculinary.com.
The GBH News app is where you want to start your day. It has the news you need, big stories, curated local coverage, no filler. Download it today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. This is The Culture Show, and this is Battlemode. That's Sweet Tooth by Battlemode, a Boston-based chiptune electro-pop band. For most people, the Game Boy is a toy, a way of passing the time with Super Mario or Link in The Legend of Zelda. But for a growing community of musicians, it's an instrument. Using the same 8-bit sound chips that fueled early video games, they're creating an entire genre known as chiptune, music that transforms nostalgia into something fun, rhythmic, and alive. Now Boston is becoming one of its hubs. Battlemode is behind Boston Bitdown. It's a multi-day music festival bringing together more than 50 chiptune artists from across the country. It happens Thursday through Sunday. And today they're here to show us how it works and to help me try to make a track live on the air, he says with trepidation as he looks across the studio at you both. I'm joined by Battlemode's Biff and Astro. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's really great to have you here.
Hey, I'm pumped to be here at GBH. I was going to say I watched Arthur twice a day growing up, so I'm very pumped to be here. And I'm looking in the hallways to see if Mr. Arthur is there and I can shake his hand.
Well, we can try to find a way for him to come down and greet you. Well, this is so exciting. Tell me about the genesis of this landing on the Game Boy and its sounds as a musical instrument.
For sure. I mean, as you said, like people have these associations with Mario, with Link, with my favorite is Mega Man, and it's kind of the links we make as children or adults, and that kind of like starts the association with the attractive sounds, and then as you kind of continue on with these chiptune journeys, you realize that you can do anything with the timbre. And Boston Bitdown features over 50 artists and different expressions of chiptune. So you're not just going to hear Mario and Zelda. You're going to see guitars. You're going to see rap. You're going to see violins,
Over what time span has this taken off and expanded to all of the musical genres?
For sure. Well, I mean, expanded into all the musical genres is still a work in progress. That's kind of the mantra of the festival right now. It's the largest chiptune fest in the world, but people are still learning what it is. So we're still building on that. But I would say as early as 2000, that was the birth year of LSDJ, the program that kind of birthed chiptune.
Is that so?
Yeah.
I told him that.
I won't ask any more history questions. Astro, you're holding a tricked out Game Boy in your hand. So how does the Game Boy become an instrument? What do you do to it?
Well, there's a gentleman named Johan Kalinske who made a program for the Game Boy that just works as like how you'd run a game. And it just emulates a DAW, a digital workstation, and it gives you hexadecimal values in 4 channels that you can manipulate those values to make sounds out of the 4 sound channels that are integrated into the CPU of the Game Boy.
So for people who didn't understand some of what you just said, because there's a lot of technical stuff there, just if you would start, because you're going to give me a lesson here. And again, if you're streaming on our GBH News YouTube channel, you'll see and hear all of what we're starting to emanate. How does this come together?
There's 4 channels on the original Game Boy. There's 2 pulse channels, there's a wavetable channel, and then there's a channel for white noise. So the 2 pulse channels can be used for leads like that give you that really square, sweet sound.
Yeah.
And then there's, the other channel doing that melody there. The wavetable channel is mostly used for sine waves and like bass sounds like that. You can even do like kicks and
fun.
bass like that.
That's fun. We just changed the vibe up.
So for a little machine, it makes some pretty fun sounds, and it's really detailed actually, the stuff you could do in here. And then there's a white noise channel, and that's just kind of shapes a staticky white noise, but you could use that for snares and hi-hats. So when you have all 4 channels, this is the max amount of sounds you can have, which gives it a sort of minimalism, gives you like constraints, but some people find their best work with, only being able to use 4 channels. So like for the bass channel you're hearing now, there's a kick and a bass noise in there. So I'm using 2 sounds on one channel to kind of like get 5 instruments out of.
Now tell me where these sounds are being pulled from. Is it the entire canon of Nintendo games that we would have played on Game Boys?
So that's the whole thing, is that none of these are samples. There's a 4-channel sound chip on the actual, like in the Game Boy itself. So these are analog sounds that instead of like using some sort of sample that already exists, I'm just using like shaping the notes and values myself. So yeah, it's actually like almost like an analog synthesizer inside the Game Boy, and then the software gives you the ability to shape the sounds the way you want.
So it's echoing what we would have heard, but you're manifesting it through the device here.
Yeah,
I'm still translating. Yeah.
So the original Game Boy is like after the first Game Boy, all of the prior ones started being sample based. So this is like truly like an analog synthesizer, whereas like is a sample, if you try to bend the note, it'll deteriorate as you go.
Yeah.
Analog sounds can be moved up and down the octave without destroying the quality of the sound.
So you guys you made history at Boston Calling. Was it last year when you played?
Yeah.
Tell me about what you did with the Game Boy and this burgeoning new element genre of performance.
Oh my gosh. I could not believe that we got Boston Calling. I thought it was a mistake. I still think it's a mistake, but but yeah, we were unless somebody can prove us wrong, we were the first Game Boy act on Boston Calling.
Yeah.
And Astro was able to perform one of our Game Boy solos on stage there.
It was the first chiptune act at Boston Calling. We were there with Avril Lavigne and Matthews and Sheryl Crow. It's like an honor to be doing that, especially for Boston, because we've been making this kind of music by ourselves in the city of Boston for over 15 years. So we really feel like Boston chiptune is part of the Boston culture. We've taken it as our own, and we have the world's biggest chiptune festival here in Boston, and we love being champions of stuff. So let's, celebrate.
Well, before we talk more about the festival, what was that moment like as you're performing? Obviously, that's a very different sound from Avril Lavigne and Sheryl Crow.
For sure,
Did you just stop?
It was a dream come true.
Yeah,
I loved every moment of it.
Did the audience just stop? I mean, it was just so new and fun and different.
Yeah, they were partying, man. They were jumping all around, and like it was such a fun time.
Yeah,
and we have a really good local community, so we saw a lot of comforting faces in the crowd as well.
For sure. It's really funny seeing what people are hearing about what people are thinking is going on. Like a lot of people who haven't seen us perform, they think we're literally playing a Mario game. Like they think he's playing a game and we're just playing music to that game soundtrack instead of that we actually wrote that song. And so yeah, it's very interesting.
And you're both really grounded in music, of course. Biff, you are a big Bernstein fan, from what I understand.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I am a big Bernstein fan. He's my favorite composer.
Candide.
For sure. That was, yeah.
We do our research here at the Culture Show.
Wow.
I also happen to love that piece so much myself. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, if you want to talk about that. Yeah, I love Candide, the overture, especially because the imagination of Bernstein, and also the groundbreaking West Side Story, bringing in the jazz to all of the pieces there. So yeah, I really like to translate innovation, imagination into music. So yeah, the Game Boy really helps us achieve that.
And Astro, where would you say your seeds are planted? One of the things I read, Eminem, you're a big fan of what he's done with music, but how would you say the DNA most shows up in what you're doing?
Man, I'm just a lover of all genres. I'm a big producer head. I love doing sampling, and yeah, I learned how to produce in Fruity Loops through the hip hop stuff. I'm from New Bedford, Mass. It's very hip hop driven city, and my brother was just huge hip hop fan. He's always listening to 3 6 Mafia and Diplomats in the 2000s, and And that also, before that, I started playing bass guitar when I was 16, and I was like a huge metalhead. I've always just been into like weird music. Like, if you know Buckethead, I love, like, Buckethead's one of my favorite musicians ever. I'm a huge, like, I'm basically like almost a hip hop historian with like, I just watch documentaries about any type of music but I love like insane weird music, you know.
Well, now tell me about this festival that is coming up this week, again, Thursday through Sunday. It's happening at different venues all over the city. Again, it's called Boston Bitdown. How would you describe the experience as these many artists, about 50 artists, come together?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an expression of chiptune, and no two artists are going to be alike. So yeah, if you're able to see the 50 artists, we have Grammy-nominated artists Megaran. We have the Sega, David Hafalosa, who was the Sega of America audio engineer between 1989 and 1996, who was signing off on huge Sonic stuff. And then we have artists that you've never heard of, and they are in their bedrooms crafting their chiptune masterpieces, and we know them because, you know, we're tapped into that particular world, and we want to share them with you because they're incredible. We know you haven't heard of. It's
going to be a super huge party.
Yeah,
it's going to be super fun. You're going to see things you've never seen before. There's going to be live coding of music, which even like for someone like me who makes chiptune, it blows my mind out of the water. Super good fun times. There's going to be dancing. There's going to be arcade games. If you love video games and you love music, you have to go to Boston Bitdown.
Well, this sounds like such a blast. We're going to play out some of your music. Again, this is Battlemode, to hear a little bit more of what you're doing, to get us all in the vibe. And I really hope that you cross paths with the BSO president in the green room, because wouldn't that be fun to hear you on the Symphony Hall stage?
There we go.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being here today. I've been speaking with Biff and Astro of Battlemode, the Boston-based electronic group behind Boston Bitdown. It's a multi-day chiptune festival featuring more than 50 performers from across the country. It's happening Thursday through Sunday at venues across Greater Boston. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4 and Marketplace at 6:30. But first, the world. A global view of today's headlines from the World Newsroom, right here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And the Bach Center's Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame, presenting its annual induction celebration March 24th at the Bach Center Wang Theater, honoring influential artists with tributes, live performances, and an onstage dinner. FolkAmericanaRootsHallOfFame.org. Daydreaming is nice, but streaming anytime is better. Download the PBS app to start streaming all your favorite GBH shows whenever you want.